stone, gold, and ink, objects meant to endure, have outlived the people who made them. Yet some ancient Egyptian artifacts refuse to sit quietly in museum cases. Their precision, symbolism, and purpose still challenge modern understanding. How were these objects crafted with such accuracy? What knowledge guided their design, and why do certain meanings remain unresolved after centuries of study? From finely engineered tools to ritual objects that defy simple explanation, these relics suggest a worldview far more complex than we often assume. Tonight, we begin a journey into the artifacts that still ask questions and rarely give easy answers. Beneath the scorching sun of the Egyptian desert, upon the edge of the sacred island of Sahel, lies a weathered basalt slab known simply as the Famine Stela. Its surface, etched with rows of hieroglyphs, seems almost to hum with the weight of centuries, a silent witness to stories long forgotten. The stone is unassuming at first glance, yet the messages carved into it hint at events of profound consequence, a 7-year famine that shook the foundations of an empire, and the divine interventions that were said to restore balance to the land. Travelers and scholars alike are drawn to its quiet authority, each line of text a puzzle whispering of both human resilience and enigmatic forces beyond ordinary comprehension. The Famine. Stela dates back to the Ptolemaic period, around the 3rd century BCE, though the events it recounts are said to reach far deeper into Egypt's past, during the reign of Pharaoh Djoser of the 3rd Dynasty. According to the inscription, the Nile, Egypt's lifeblood, failed to flood as expected, bringing drought and famine upon the people. In despair, the pharaoh seeks guidance, and the god Khnum, the divine potter of human life, is said to appear in a vision, instructing him to restore temples and perform sacred rituals. The stela records these actions in meticulous detail, blending accounts of natural disaster with spiritual authority, offering a glimpse of how the ancient Egyptians understood the delicate balance between man, nature, and the divine. Yet the Famine Stela is more than a straightforward historical record. Scholars have long puzzled over certain elements of its story. The text's emphasis on temple construction and divine communication may serve a political or religious purpose, legitimizing the rule of the pharaoh in times of crisis. Some argue it reflects Ptolemaic attempts to link themselves to the glories of the distant past, creating continuity with Egypt's legendary rulers. Others suggest the famine itself might have had a basis in reality, an unusually low Nile flood, a shift in climate, or other ecological factors, but the absence of corroborating records makes it difficult to confirm. Even the date of the stela's creation invites questions. Why inscribe a famine centuries after the supposed events? Was it meant as a warning, a commemoration, or something else entirely? Then there are the details that strain the boundaries of conventional explanation. The stela speaks of celestial alignments and the will of Khnum in ways that suggest a sophisticated understanding of cosmic patterns, at least in symbolic terms. The precision with which the rituals and measurements are described has led some researchers to wonder whether hidden layers of knowledge, astronomical, agricultural, or mystical, might be encoded in the text. Could the Famine Stela hold clues about ancient methods of predicting the Nile's behavior, or even lost knowledge of environmental management? Or does its enduring mystery reside solely in the power of storytelling, in the way it blends fact with divine authority to shape the collective memory of a civilization? Even today, the Famine Stela challenges our assumptions about history, memory, and the ways human societies confront catastrophe. Standing before it, one is struck by the interplay of permanence and fragility. The stone endures, yet its precise meaning remains elusive, as if time itself has obscured some essential truth. Every hieroglyph seems to invite interpretation, yet no interpretation feels complete. Was this famine purely symbolic? A moral tale wrapped in historical trappings? Or does it preserve a record of events so profound that only the gods themselves could fully comprehend their impact? As the desert wind whispers across the island of Sahel, brushing against the ancient inscriptions, the Famine Stela remains a silent interlocutor, offering fragments of history and fragments of mystery. It is a monument to survival, devotion, and perhaps the limits of human understanding. And as we trace the grooves of its carefully carved hieroglyphs, we are left to wonder what truths were lost to time, and what secrets does this enigmatic stone continue to hold, waiting for the curious and the patient to uncover them. As the shadow of the sun stretches across the sands of the Fayum oasis, the Pyramid of Lahun rises, smaller and less celebrated than its grand neighbors at Giza, yet imbued with an air of subtle mystery. From a distance, it appears almost modest, its smooth limestone casing largely stripped away by time, revealing a core of mud brick that glows warm under the Egyptian sun. But closer inspection reveals a structure of unusual sophistication, a testament to the ingenuity of the Middle Kingdom and the reign of Pharaoh Senusret II. It is a pyramid that defies immediate understanding, where every corridor and chamber seems to whisper secrets only partially known to those who dare to enter. The Pyramid of Lahun, built around 1880 BCE, was originally intended as the final resting place for Senusret II, a ruler whose reign marked a period of political consolidation and agricultural innovation. The pyramid sits atop a carefully chosen plateau, overlooking the fertile Fayum Depression, a landscape already infused with layers of human intervention, canals, settlements, and earlier sacred sites. Its construction deviates from the classical, perfect pyramid form familiar from Giza. Instead, Lahun is a step pyramid that was later smoothed, with dimensions slightly elongated in one direction, a shape that has long puzzled Egyptologists. Why did the architects choose this design? Was it a symbolic choice, a practical adjustment to the underlying geology, or could it conceal knowledge we have yet to decipher? Inside, the pyramid presents an equally enigmatic picture. The main entrance, not at the base but along the northern face, leads into a labyrinthine descent. The corridors twist and turn with surprising precision, guiding visitors down through layers of stone and brick, past relieving chambers and small niches. Archaeologists note that the passageways are unusually narrow, with ceilings sloping at angles that suggest deliberate design rather than simple engineering necessity. Some chambers are lined with reliefs and inscriptions, while others are stark and unadorned. Scholars have speculated on their purpose: storage, ritual, or structural reinforcement. But the possibility of hidden or undiscovered spaces has fueled decades of intrigue. Could there be chambers still sealed beneath the earth, protecting relics, records, or knowledge lost to time? Theories about the pyramid's internal complexity are manifold. Mainstream archaeology offers a measured explanation. The corridors and subsidiary rooms were likely designed for practical and symbolic reasons, to deter tomb robbers and to honor the pharaoh with a funerary complex reflecting his divine status. Yet, the pyramid's unusual layout invites speculation. Some researchers have pointed to the precision of certain corridors, noting alignments that seem to correspond with celestial events. Others have wondered whether secret passages might have served as conduits for ceremonial rites, hidden from the public eye, but critical to the pyramid's ritual function. The possibility that the architects embedded layers of information in the very angles and proportions of the structure cannot be entirely dismissed, though definitive proof remains elusive. Excavations in the 19th and 20th centuries revealed part of the burial chamber and associated artifacts, including funerary goods and remnants of the pharaoh's mummy, though much had already been disturbed by ancient looters. Still, careful study of the remaining corridors has uncovered anomalies: blocked passages that suggest intentional concealment, small niches whose purpose is unclear, and traces of unfinished construction that hint at a plan never fully realized. Could these elements represent a sophisticated understanding of architecture, engineering, and symbolism, or might they hide a more mysterious purpose entirely? Some fringe theories propose hidden tunnels extending beyond the pyramid's base, possibly connecting to other Middle Kingdom sites in the region. Others suggest encoded maps of sacred landscapes or astronomical charts. While such ideas remain speculative, the mere possibility adds a layer of intrigue that continues to draw explorers and researchers alike. Above all, the Pyramid of Lahun challenges assumptions about the Middle Kingdom. Often overshadowed by the monuments of Old Kingdom kings, it demonstrates a level of ingenuity and complexity that is easy to overlook. Its mud brick core, seemingly humble, has survived thousands of years against erosion and earthquakes, preserving passages that still hold their secrets. The pyramid's very design encourages careful observation, a subtle invitation to question, to measure, and to imagine. How did ancient engineers manage the stability of such a structure with the materials available? What rituals or knowledge might have guided their choices? Could the pyramid's hidden spaces preserve information that would transform our understanding of Middle Kingdom Egypt? Or are they simply the result of architectural experimentation and evolving funerary practices? Standing before the Pyramid of Lahun today, one cannot help but feel a sense of quiet reverence and lingering curiosity. The wind carries the faint scent of sand and stone, brushing against the weathered blocks as if the monument itself breathes the passage of time. Light falls through gaps in the masonry, casting shifting patterns along the corridors, revealing angles and shadows that might have been intentional, or simply the work of millennia. Each hidden passage invites exploration, each blocked niche a reminder that the past is only partially known, that even the most carefully constructed tombs may harbor mysteries beyond immediate comprehension. As we trace the contours of the pyramid and imagine the hands that built it, questions multiply. What else might lie concealed behind the walls, beyond the reach of modern excavation? What knowledge or artifacts have been lost to history, waiting quietly beneath the sands? And perhaps most compellingly, what does the Pyramid of Lahun tell us about the people who built it? Not only as engineers or rulers, but as thinkers, dreamers, and seekers of truths that may forever remain just out of reach. As the morning sun drapes the eastern Nile Delta in a soft, golden light, the ruins of Tanis rise from the flat plains like echoes of a once great civilization. Unlike the pyramids and tombs that dominate Egypt's more famous landscapes, Tanis presents a subtler majesty, a city whose grandeur has been concealed beneath layers of sand, silt, and centuries of neglect. Once a bustling capital of the Nile Delta, it was a place of temples, palaces, and sacred precincts, yet today only fragments remain, scattered across the desert like remnants of a forgotten dream. Walking among its weathered stones, one is struck by the tension between what is visible and what is missing, as if the city itself invites inquiry into secrets long buried. Tanis reached its peak during the Third Intermediate Period, around 1070 to 664 BCE, and is often overshadowed in historical memory by the more famous capitals of Memphis and Thebes. Archaeological discoveries, however, reveal a city of remarkable wealth and complexity. Massive temples once rose here, their walls decorated with intricate reliefs depicting kings and gods, while broad avenues connected monumental structures designed to impress both the living and the divine. Excavations have uncovered colossal statues, ceremonial artifacts, and the remains of palaces whose scale hints at the city's political and spiritual significance. Yet even these findings tell only part of the story. Why, despite its evident importance, did Tanis vanish from historical prominence? What forces transformed a thriving capital into a ghostly echo in the sands? The mysteries of Tanis deepen when considering its treasures. Unlike most other ancient Egyptian sites, the city's royal necropolises were surprisingly intact when rediscovered in the 20th century. Pharaohs of the 21st and 22nd dynasties were buried here, their tombs containing gold, jewelry, and sacred relics that rivaled those of Tutankhamun. How did these treasures survive the systematic looting that so thoroughly emptied other tombs? Some suggest that shifting rivers and silt deposits may have inadvertently protected them, creating natural barriers to grave robbers. Others hint at something more enigmatic. Could Tanis have been intentionally preserved, hidden from view by the very people who once ruled there? Excavations have revealed tantalizing fragments of history and hints of the unknown. Massive statues of kings loom over open courtyards, their faces weathered but still emanating authority. Obelisks rise from scattered foundations, some bearing inscriptions that reference gods, dynastic lineages, or perhaps even events that remain poorly understood. Among these discoveries, researchers have noted anomalies, inscriptions that seem repetitive or symbolic, architectural choices that diverge from typical Egyptian conventions, and chambers whose function is still debated. Were these merely artistic or ceremonial variations, or do they point to a deeper, perhaps forgotten, layer of meaning? Speculation has long surrounded the city's sudden disappearance from prominence. Some scholars point to environmental changes, shifting river courses, flooding, and the gradual encroachment of the Nile Delta's marshes as factors that undermined the city's viability. Others consider political or religious reasons, the rise of other regional powers, changing cult practices, or dynastic upheavals that left Tanis abandoned and slowly swallowed by the desert. Yet the speed with which the city faded from memory, combined with the remarkable preservation of certain treasures, leaves lingering questions. Was Tanis merely another casualty of time and nature, or does its survival in fragments conceal deliberate choices, coded messages, or undiscovered knowledge? Adding to the intrigue are the occasional anomalies and mysteries that defy easy explanation. Some ruins appear misaligned with known urban planning patterns, prompting speculation about astronomical, symbolic, or ritual purposes. Certain artifacts, such as inscribed stelae or ceremonial objects, seem to reference events or connections that have yet to be fully understood. And while mainstream archaeology has made great strides in piecing together the city's layout, many corridors, chambers, and potential subterranean spaces remain unexplored or only partially mapped. Could Tanis still conceal hidden archives, sealed chambers, or artifacts that might rewrite aspects of Egyptian history? Or are these simply echoes of the human imagination, responding to the enigmatic aura that surrounds any lost city? Even as modern technology, ground-penetrating radar, satellite imaging, and careful excavation reveals more of Tanis, the city retains an aura of mystery. Walking its ruins, one senses a place that was meticulously designed, inhabited by rulers, priests, and citizens whose lives were intertwined with the ebb and flow of the Nile and the favor of the gods. The stones, weathered and scattered, seem to invite contemplation. What stories have been lost? What messages were carved into walls now buried, waiting for patient eyes to uncover them? And what truths about Egypt's complex political and religious history remain just beyond reach, hidden beneath layers of sand and time? The forgotten city of Tanis is more than a site of archaeology. It is a reminder of the impermanence of human memory and the enduring power of curiosity. Its streets, temples, and tombs challenge us to imagine the lives of those who walked here millennia ago, to consider the forces that shaped their world, and to wonder what secrets may still lie buried beneath the soil. Even now, the city continues to speak, softly, insistently, through its ruins, asking the same questions we ask ourselves. How much of the past can truly be known, and how many mysteries remain concealed, waiting for the patient, the careful, and the curious to discover them? In the dim corridors of the Theban necropolis, among tombs etched with hieroglyphs and adorned with vivid depictions of gods, pharaohs, and the afterlife, the legacy of MERNEPTAH seems to hang in a peculiar shadow. Unlike his father, the legendary Ramesses II, whose reign and monuments are etched into the memory of history, MERNEPTAH's line appears strangely ephemeral, almost vanishing from the annals of Egypt. His tomb, KV8, carved into the rocky cliffs of the Valley of the Kings, stands as a solemn monument to a ruler whose reign, while significant, is often overshadowed by the grandeur of his predecessors. Yet it is precisely in this subtlety, this near obscurity, that the intrigue begins. MERNEPTAH, the 13th son of Ramesses II, ascended the throne late in life, at a time when Egypt was navigating political challenges both within and beyond its borders. His reign, around 1213 to 1203 BCE, is marked by campaigns against Libyan tribes and peoples of the Levant, victories memorialized in the famed MERNEPTAH stele, which contains the earliest known reference to Israel. Yet despite these triumphs, the king's own lineage seems to fade almost immediately after his death. While tombs, inscriptions, and monuments from Ramesses II's long line of heirs are abundant, MERNEPTAH's successors are less well documented, and his direct descendants appear to have left few traces. How does a royal line, so clearly part of the most powerful dynasty of Egypt, vanish from the historical record? Scholars have proposed several mainstream explanations. Some suggest that internal strife and succession disputes led to a rapid decline of MERNEPTAH's heirs, effectively erasing their presence from public memory. Others argue that political shifts in the late 19th dynasty, coupled with the rise of later rulers like Seti II and Siptah, overshadowed MERNEPTAH's contributions, relegating his family to obscurity. Yet these explanations, while plausible, leave gaps. The paucity of surviving artifacts, royal inscriptions, stelae, and monuments invites a sense of something more deliberate, or at least more mysterious, in the disappearance of his lineage. The tomb of MERNEPTAH itself presents subtle enigmas. K58, though carefully designed, is smaller and less ornate than those of his father or other prominent 19th dynasty pharaohs. Its walls are decorated with traditional funerary texts, yet the spaces for subsidiary burials of family members are limited. Could this reflect practical constraints, or does it hint at internal dynamics, perhaps tension within the royal household, that might have contributed to the erasure of his line? The artifacts found within the tomb, jewelry, statues, ceremonial items, reveal a ruler of authority, yet they offer little evidence of a thriving familial legacy. Where are the children, the consorts, the stewards of his bloodline who might have carried his name forward? Some mysteries take the form of subtle inconsistencies in the historical record. Later kings claim authority over territories once governed by MERNEPTAH, yet with minimal reference to his family. Genealogical records are incomplete, inscriptions fragmentary, and even some monuments appear deliberately vague about succession. Inscriptions that do mention his offspring are often ambiguous, leaving researchers to wonder if names were erased, misattributed, or simply lost. Could there have been deliberate attempts to rewrite history, to obscure certain branches of the royal family in favor of others? Or were these gaps simply the result of chance, decay, and the relentless passage of time? The vanished lineage of MERNEPTAH also invites speculation beyond conventional archaeology. Some researchers ponder whether political machinations, dynastic purges, or internal religious reforms might have contributed to the near disappearance of his heirs. Others consider environmental or social factors. Epidemic disease, economic collapse, or sudden calamity could have drastically reduced the line of succession. Yet while these theories offer potential explanations, none can fully account for the near-total absence of material evidence. The notion of a royal family quietly vanishing, leaving behind only faint traces in the sands of history, is at once humbling and unnerving. Even more enigmatic are the occasional whispers of objects or inscriptions that suggest the presence of MERNEPTAH's descendants in locations far from the royal necropolis, perhaps in provincial cities or obscure sanctuaries. Could fragments of this lineage have persisted quietly, influencing local administration or religious practice, yet left no lasting trace in the central records of Egypt? And if so, what might these lost descendants reveal about the nature of power, memory, and historical record-keeping in ancient Egypt? As we examine the tomb, the stele, and the scattered artifacts associated with MERNEPTAH, a sense of quiet absence permeates the narrative. Unlike the towering monuments of Ramesses II, or the more carefully chronicled lines of later pharaohs, MERNEPTAH's legacy is measured in voids, gaps in inscriptions, missing monuments, and the abrupt silence of his descendants. This absence itself becomes a kind of artifact, challenging historians to consider not only what is present in the archaeological record, but what is conspicuously missing. How does a civilization, so meticulous in preserving its rulers' achievements, allow an entire royal lineage to almost disappear? In the end, the story of MERNEPTAH's vanished lineage reminds us that history is rarely complete. Even kings whose reigns shaped nations may leave only partial echoes behind. As we walk the corridors of Kiev 8, trace the inscriptions on the MERNEPTAH stele, and examine the fragments of a once prominent dynasty, the unanswered questions multiply. Where did his heirs go? What events, deliberate or accidental, led to their erasure? And what might still lie hidden, waiting in tombs unexcavated or inscriptions yet to be interpreted, ready to illuminate the lost chapters of Egypt's complex dynastic tapestry? As the first light of dawn spills over the eastern horizon, the Karnak temple complex rises from the sands of Luxor like a city frozen in stone and time. Colossal columns stretch toward the sky, their capitals adorned with intricate carvings of lotus and papyrus, while massive pylons mark gateways to inner sanctuaries that have stood for over 3 millennia. The air here seems heavier, charged with the whispers of countless ceremonies, the steps of priests, and the silent awe of generations who once walked these sacred precincts. Karnak is not a single temple, but a sprawling network of sanctuaries, halls, and courtyards, built and rebuilt by successive pharaohs, each layer adding to its grandeur and to its enduring mysteries. Karnak's primary dedication is to Amun-Ra, the sun and creator god, yet within its walls lies a confluence of deities, rituals, and royal ambitions. The great hypostyle hall, with its 134 towering columns, overwhelms the senses, while hidden chapels and subsidiary shrines seem almost tucked away, waiting to be discovered. The temple's scale is staggering. No other site in Egypt reflects the same concentration of architectural evolution across centuries, from the Middle Kingdom to the Ptolemaic period. But it is precisely this accumulation of time, of construction and reconstruction, that creates layers of intrigue. For every well-documented sanctuary, there are corridors, chambers, and inscriptions whose purpose remains unclear, raising questions that scholars and explorers have pondered for generations. The mysteries of Karnak begin with its layout. While much of the temple follows known principles of Egyptian temple design, certain sections break from convention. Passages seem deliberately misaligned or concealed, their walls sometimes bearing inscriptions that appear to reference events, rituals, or celestial phenomena that are not fully understood. Some archaeologists have noted corridors that terminate abruptly, or doors sealed with no apparent reason, suggesting that portions of the complex may have been intentionally hidden. Were these secret spaces meant to house relics, or to serve ritual purposes inaccessible to the public? And if so, what knowledge or sacred practices might have been preserved within them? Karnak is also a palimpsest of dynasties. From Thutmose I to Ramesses III, rulers added obelisks, statues, and chapels, each leaving their mark while incorporating or even obscuring the work of predecessors. Some of these layers contain inscriptions and carvings that remain enigmatic, either due to damage, erosion, or deliberate omission. The Temple of Khonsu, a later addition, contains reliefs and texts that hint at rituals known only to a select priesthood, while the Festival Hall of Thutmose III presents astronomical alignments that continue to puzzle researchers. Could there be knowledge embedded in the temple's proportions and orientations, astronomical, religious, or even mathematical, that modern scholars have yet to decipher? Artifacts recovered from Karnak further deepen the intrigue. Massive statues, ceremonial stelae, and sacred boats all testify to the wealth and devotion of those who served here. Yet, some objects defy easy explanation. Certain reliefs appear anomalous, depicting scenes that do not conform to conventional religious narratives, or symbols whose meaning remains obscure. Scholars debate whether these represent local cult practices, lost myths, or deliberate esoteric knowledge. Others have noted that some inscriptions seem to encode information beyond the literal, perhaps mapping the Nile, the heavens, or sacred geography in ways that are not immediately apparent. Are these merely artistic flourishes, or do they hint at a deeper layer of understanding hidden in plain sight? Even the construction itself invites questions. The precision of the columns, the alignment of pylons, and the integration of vast stone blocks suggest architectural knowledge of remarkable sophistication. How did the builders manage such feats with the tools of their time? Were there undiscovered methods or techniques passed down through generations, now lost to history? And beyond engineering, could there have been symbolic or mystical principles guiding the placement of each structure, each corridor, each sanctified space? The Karnak temple complex also holds secrets beneath its visible surface. Excavations have revealed tunnels, chambers, and foundation deposits that hint at ritual or practical purposes we may never fully understand. Some underground spaces contain artifacts or inscriptions that appear disconnected from the main temple narrative, suggesting practices that were intentionally concealed or that belong to earlier phases of construction. Could these hidden layers preserve knowledge, treasures, or even records of events that have vanished elsewhere in Egyptian history? And what might future discoveries reveal, as technology allows deeper exploration beneath the sands and stone? Walking among the towering pylons and endless columns today, one feels the weight of time pressing gently, insistently against the present. Every carved symbol, every shadowed passage, and every relic seems to ask the same questions. How much of Karnak's story has been lost, and how much remains hidden, waiting for the careful eye and patient hand to uncover it? The temple is at once a monument to human devotion, an architectural marvel, and a repository of mysteries that may never be fully solved. It challenges us to see not only what was created, but what was preserved, concealed, or encoded, inviting contemplation of the profound intelligence, faith, and ambition of those who built it. The hidden secrets of Karnak endure in these layers, visible yet elusive, monumental yet intimate, precise yet mysterious. As we trace the corridors, study the inscriptions, and imagine the ceremonies that once filled these halls, the questions multiply. What knowledge lies buried within its chambers? What messages were intended only for the eyes of the initiated? And even as centuries of scholars, explorers, and archaeologists have come and gone, how many of Karnak's most profound secrets remain just beyond our reach, whispering softly across the sands of time, waiting for discovery? Nestled within the vast precinct of the Karnak temple complex lies a shimmering pool, its surface reflecting the towering pylons and the sky above, a feature that seems almost incongruous amidst the monumental stone architecture. Known as the Sacred Lake, this body of water is more than a mere ornamental feature. It was a central element of ritual life in ancient Thebes, a site where priests and pharaohs alike sought purification, divine guidance, and a tangible connection to the gods. Today, the lake appears tranquil, its calm waters stretching in a nearly perfect rectangle framed by stone embankments and ceremonial stairs. Yet beneath its serene surface lies a history that continues to captivate and confound. The lake is vast, measuring approximately 150 meters in length and 77 meters in width, and was constructed during the New Kingdom, though successive pharaohs and high priests maintained and modified it over centuries. Ancient texts describe the lake as a place of spiritual cleansing. Priests would enter its waters before performing sacred rites. Boats carrying divine images would glide across its surface during festivals, and ceremonial offerings were cast into its depths. The lake was thought to mirror the primordial waters of creation, the chaotic yet fertile waters from which life itself emerged, a powerful symbol in Egyptian cosmology. But for all its symbolism, the lake also raises practical and mysterious questions. How did the builders manage such a vast, stable body of water in the arid environment of the Nile Delta? Were there hidden channels, reservoirs, or hydraulic systems that remain undiscovered? Archaeologists have noted that the lake is remarkably uniform in depth, with gentle slopes leading down to its center, and that the surrounding stonework shows evidence of careful engineering. Yet no definitive explanation has been found for how the water level was maintained year-round, especially given seasonal fluctuations in the Nile and the arid climate of Upper Egypt. Some researchers propose that the lake was fed by an intricate system of canals and aqueducts, linking it to the Nile, while others suggest the possibility of natural springs beneath the site. Could there be aspects of ancient hydraulic knowledge, now lost, embedded within the lake's construction? Or was its design a combination of ingenuity and careful maintenance, managed entirely by the temple's priesthood? The sacred lake also carries layers of ritual significance that continue to puzzle scholars. Texts describe priests performing ablutions, symbolic gestures, and purification ceremonies that were essential for maintaining the temple's spiritual integrity. Certain rituals, however, appear only partially understood. Some involve sequences of movements or recitations whose exact meaning has been lost, while others hint at celestial timing or connections to the cycles of the Nile. Some historians have proposed that the lake functioned as a reflection of the heavens, a mirror through which the divine order could be observed or interpreted. Others speculate that its dimensions and orientation may encode knowledge of astronomy or sacred geometry, though the evidence remains tantalizingly incomplete. Mysteries deepen when considering the artifacts associated with the lake. Small votive offerings, ceremonial boats, and inscriptions found along its edges suggest that the waters were more than symbolic. They may have been seen as a conduit between the mortal and divine realms. Some reliefs depict the pharaoh purifying himself in the lake before receiving the favor of Amun-Ra, while others show priests launching sacred barges that carry statues of gods across the surface. The precision and consistency of these depictions, coupled with the lake's enduring presence over centuries, imply a carefully maintained ritual practice whose full meaning may have been known only to an initiated few. What knowledge or power did these rites convey, and why was the lake so central to spiritual life at Karnak? Even the lake's physical secrets remain partly hidden. Excavations have revealed submerged stonework, channels, and remnants of ceremonial structures, yet much lies unexplored beneath the water. Could these submerged features indicate ritual spaces, hidden chambers, or symbolic constructions that have eluded documentation? Some researchers speculate that certain features may have been designed to create optical or acoustic effects during ceremonies, enhancing the mystical experience. Others propose that the lake itself and the acts performed upon it encoded symbolic knowledge about the universe, the Nile, or the cycles of life and death, a sacred map hidden in plain sight, known only to the temple's elite. Walking along its stone embankments today, one feels a sense of calm punctuated by subtle unease, as if the waters themselves hold memories of countless generations of ritual and devotion. The wind rustles across the surface, creating ripples that distort reflections of columns and pylons, and the lake seems to shimmer with secrets, visible yet obscured. For thousands of years it has borne witness to acts of devotion, purification, and ceremony, serving as both a literal and metaphorical mirror of the spiritual life of Karnak. And yet, for all that we know, questions persist. How much of the lake's full purpose remains hidden? What was truly conveyed in the rites performed upon its waters, and how much remains lost to time? The sacred lake of Karnak endures as a symbol of mystery and reverence. It is a space where the practical and the sacred converge, where water becomes both medium and metaphor, where human devotion reaches toward the divine. Even now, its surface invites contemplation. What layers of knowledge, belief, and hidden history might still lie beneath? What stories, rituals, or symbols remain submerged, waiting for patient eyes to uncover them? As we stand at its edge, tracing the contours of the lake and imagining the ceremonies of millennia past, we are reminded that in the world of ancient Egypt, even the simplest element, water, can hold mysteries that continue to defy our understanding, whispering across the centuries to those willing to listen. In a quiet, dimly lit room of the Museo Egizio in Turin, Italy, rests a fragmentary papyrus that seems almost unremarkable at first glance. Fragile, brittle, and darkened with age, its edges ragged, its surface etched with rows of hieroglyphs meticulously arranged in columns. This is the Turin King List, also known as the Turin Royal Canon, a document that offers one of the most comprehensive attempts to record the pharaohs of Egypt, spanning from the earliest dynasties to the Ramesside period. Yet what is remarkable is not just its content, but its gaps, its omissions, and its tantalizing fragments, which whisper of kings who may have reigned but left few traces, and dynasties that have vanished from both history and memory. The papyrus itself dates to the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses II, or perhaps one of his successors, and it is believed to be a copy of an earlier list, itself likely compiled for religious and administrative purposes. Its purpose was to legitimize and preserve the historical continuity of the Egyptian monarchy, a careful accounting of rulers in a civilization obsessed with order, ma'at, and the eternal cycle of kingship. Yet as scholars have painstakingly pieced together its fragmented lines, a puzzle emerges. Many names are smudged or missing entirely. Some entries list kings whose existence is otherwise unattested. Entire dynasties seem absent, raising questions about deliberate erasures, lost records, or political upheavals that obscured the record. Why would a civilization so meticulous in record-keeping leave such gaps in a document meant to safeguard memory? The Turin King List is structured with a precision that belies its age. Each column represents a dynasty, each row a ruler, accompanied, when the papyrus survives sufficiently, with the length of their reign in years, months, and days. In some cases, the entries are astonishingly detailed, providing reign lengths that suggest careful administrative documentation. In others, the gaps are jarring, blank spaces or smudges where names have faded into obscurity. Scholars argue that these inconsistencies may reflect a combination of physical decay, scribal error, or deliberate omission. Could these missing kings represent rulers whose legitimacy was contested, whose reigns were brief and turbulent, or whose memory was intentionally erased by successors? The implications are profound. The King List is more than a chronological record. It is a key to understanding Egypt's political and religious history. By studying its sequences, Egyptologists have attempted to reconstruct dynastic transitions, map territorial control, and track the ebb and flow of power. Yet, for every entry clarified, new questions arise. Some dynasties appear compressed, with reigns that seem improbably short, while others may be duplicated or misattributed. Certain kings listed in the Turin papyrus are otherwise unknown, their names absent from monumental inscriptions, tombs, or archaeological contexts. How many rulers, lost to time, shaped the course of Egypt's history without leaving enduring monuments? And why does the papyrus preserve only a shadow of their presence? Some researchers have speculated that the Turin king list may contain references to obscure or hidden dynasties, regional rulers, ephemeral kings, or periods of political fragmentation that mainstream accounts have overlooked. Others consider the possibility of deliberate omissions driven by ideology. Perhaps scribes excluded rulers deemed illegitimate, heretical, or disruptive to the continuity of Ma'at. There are even suggestions that the list encodes symbolic or ritual knowledge, a reflection not only of temporal history but of cosmic order, linking kingship to the cycles of the heavens. Could the missing names and gaps serve a dual purpose, both practical and esoteric, intended to convey a message to those initiated in royal or priestly traditions? The physical state of the papyrus amplifies its aura of mystery. Discovered in the 1820s by the Italian scholar Bernardino Drovetti, and later studied by scholars such as Gustav Seyfarth and Alan Gardner, the fragments arrived in Turin, fragmented and delicate, requiring meticulous reconstruction. Even today, certain portions remain lost or illegible, leaving a narrative permanently incomplete. Some sections have been pieced together only through comparison with other king lists, including the Abydos king list and Manetho's later histories, yet discrepancies remain. Each comparison reveals both consistency and contradiction, reinforcing the sense that our understanding of Egypt's dynastic history is a mosaic of certainty and speculation. The king list also prompts reflection on the nature of historical memory itself. For a civilization that built monumental pyramids, temples, and tombs to ensure the immortality of its rulers, the selective survival of names and reigns raises profound questions. What defines historical permanence, and what determines oblivion? How many rulers were forgotten not because they lacked significance, but because the sands of time, political shifts, or clerical choices obscured their place in history? And what might still lie hidden? Lost tombs, inscriptions, or artifacts that could restore these missing chapters and reshape our understanding of Egypt's complex dynastic tapestry. Even now, as scholars scrutinize each fragment under bright light, tracing hieroglyphic lines with meticulous care, the Turin king list continues to speak across millennia. Its gaps, smudges, and omissions are as revealing as its preserved entries, reminding us that history is rarely a complete record. It is shaped as much by memory and omission as by fact. Standing before the papyrus, or imagining its once vibrant presence in the temple archives, it is impossible not to feel the weight of those vanished rulers, their lives and legacies partially erased, their existence preserved only in fragments of ink on fragile papyrus. The Turin king list endures as both a tool and a mystery, a record of what was and a testament to what has been lost. It invites us to contemplate the rulers who have slipped through history's grasp, to question the nature of historical authority, and to imagine what might still lie undiscovered in the sands, tombs, and archives of ancient Egypt. For every name preserved, there is at least one lost to time, and in that interplay of presence and absence, the story of Egypt's past remains alive, unfinished, enigmatic, and waiting for the patient observer to uncover its secrets. Deep within the sands of the Nile Delta, in the ancient necropolis of Tanis, a discovery was made that would forever alter our understanding of royal funerary practices in Egypt. Nestled inside a hidden tomb, untouched by grave robbers for millennia, lay the golden visage of Pharaoh Psusennes I, an artifact of dazzling craftsmanship, yet shrouded in mystery. Unlike the more widely known treasures of Tutankhamun, Psusennes' mask is understated, serene, and almost introspective in its expression, yet every line and curve seems deliberately designed to convey both authority and divinity. It is a mask that invites prolonged observation, a silent witness to a time long vanished, and a reminder that even the most familiar materials, gold, lapis lazuli, and silver, can hold secrets we have yet to fully understand. Psusennes I reigned during the 21st dynasty, around 1047 to 1001 BCE, a period often referred to as Egypt's third intermediate period. This era is characterized by political decentralization and a complex relationship between the pharaohs of the Delta and the priesthood of Amun in Thebes. The tomb of Psusennes, designated as Tanis Tomb I, was discovered in 1940 by the French archaeologist Pierre Montet. Unlike the tombs of the Valley of the Kings, this delta necropolis had remained concealed beneath layers of alluvial silt, effectively preserving its contents. The mask, crafted from gold overlaid with silver and inlaid with lapis lazuli, embodies the artistic sophistication of the period, yet its very existence in the northern delta, rather than in Thebes, prompts questions about regional variations in royal burials and the shifting centers of power. Why did the pharaohs of this period choose Tanis, so far from the traditional royal heart of Upper Egypt, for such significant burials? Was it purely political, a reflection of Delta influence, or is there something more symbolic embedded in the site selection? The mask itself is a study in contrast. Where Tutankhamun's funerary mask conveys opulence and elaborate ornamentation, Psusennes' mask is more austere, with subtle contours, delicate inlays, and a lifelike serenity that is almost meditative. The gold of the face, slightly oxidized over time, retains a warmth that seems to breathe life into the features, while the silver in the lower portion of the mask introduces a duality of materials that is unusual in Egyptian funerary art. Some scholars interpret this combination as symbolic, perhaps representing the duality of Upper and Lower Egypt, or the interplay between the earthly and the divine. Yet these interpretations remain speculative, leaving room for imagination. Could the choice of materials hold a hidden code, an esoteric meaning understood only by the priesthood or the pharaoh himself? Further intrigue emerges when considering the mask's preservation. Unlike the tombs of earlier dynasties, which suffered extensive looting, Psusennes' burial remained largely intact. Every piece of the burial ensemble, from the mask to the coffin, jewelry, and ritual objects, was found in near pristine condition. How did such a significant royal tomb remain undisturbed in an era when grave robbing was widespread? Was it purely the protective advantage of Tanis's silt and shifting Nile channels, or were there additional measures, perhaps ritual or architectural, designed to conceal the pharaoh's final resting place? Some researchers speculate that the tomb's location, deep within a delta labyrinth, was deliberately chosen to hide its treasures from prying eyes, but no definitive answer exists. The craftsmanship of the mask itself raises additional questions. The facial features are remarkably lifelike, with subtle modeling of the eyes, lips, and cheekbones. The inlaid eyebrows and cosmetic lines suggest a sophisticated understanding of human anatomy, yet the techniques used to achieve such precision in gold and silver are still not fully documented. Were there workshops in Tanis producing objects of such high quality, or were the components transported from more traditional centers of craftsmanship? And could there be methods or knowledge employed in its creation that remain lost to history, techniques passed down orally or through apprenticeship but never recorded? The mask also hints at deeper layers of ritual and spiritual significance. Funerary masks were not merely ornamental. They were intended to ensure the pharaoh's safe passage to the afterlife, to protect the soul, and to facilitate communion with the gods. Yet, Psusennes' mask, with its unique material combination and subtle expressiveness, seems to suggest a more contemplative philosophy, a focus not just on protection or display, but on reflection, balance, and perhaps hidden esoteric truths. Some theorists propose that the mask may encode symbolic references to celestial events, seasonal cycles, or religious cosmology. Others speculate that it could have been designed to interact with light or the surrounding tomb environment, creating effects during rituals that remain invisible to the modern eye. Even the placement of the mask within the tomb raises questions. Positioned over the head and shoulders of Psusennes' mummy, it appears almost serene, yet it is deliberately aligned with other ritual objects, inscriptions, and the coffin itself. The ensemble, when viewed as a whole, forms a complex network of symbols, materials, and spatial relationships, hinting at ritual practices that may have been known only to a select few. Could there be hidden patterns, perhaps linked to numerology, sacred geometry, or theological cosmology, encoded within this arrangement? And if so, what might these patterns reveal about the beliefs, priorities, or spiritual insights of the 21st dynasty? Walking through the tomb today, it is impossible not to sense the quiet authority of Psusennes' final resting place. The mask, gleaming softly in the filtered light, seems to observe, to question, to convey the dignity of a ruler whose reign is only partially illuminated by surviving texts and inscriptions. It is a reminder that history is often a patchwork of presence and absence, of grand monuments and subtle treasures, and that the choices made by ancient Egyptians, of material, placement, and design, carry layers of meaning that we may only glimpse. The golden mask of Psusennes endures as both a masterpiece of artistry and an emblem of mystery. It is a relic of human skill and devotion, yet it also invites contemplation of the unknown, the lost techniques of its creation, the unrecorded rituals of its use, the political and spiritual currents that shaped its existence. For every detail we can describe, there is a question unanswered. For every feature we can interpret, there is another shrouded in obscurity. As we study its gold and silver, trace the curves of its face, and imagine the ceremonies it once witnessed, we are reminded that even the most tangible artifacts of ancient Egypt can preserve secrets that elude the historian, the archaeologist, and the curious observer alike. The mask is more than an object. It is a bridge across millennia, a whisper from the past, an invitation to wonder. What knowledge, rituals, or symbolic insights might still lie hidden within Psusennes' tomb, or within the techniques of its creation? What stories of power, devotion, and belief have been lost even as the mask survives? And what might future discoveries reveal, not only about this pharaoh, but about the layers of mystery, culture, and artistry that define the ancient world? As the golden visage gazes forward, it leaves us with questions as enduring as the Nile itself, a silent testament to a civilization that continues to astonish, confound, and inspire. Rising from the flowing waters of the Nile, at the southern edge of Egypt, where the river narrows toward the first cataract, lies Elephantine Island, a slender, rocky stretch of land that has served as both a natural boundary and a spiritual focal point for millennia. Its name, derived from the ancient presence of elephants in the region, belies the deeper enigmas it harbors: temples, fortifications, and layers of settlements that hint at a civilization in dialogue with the divine, the political, and the mysterious. Today, the island seems tranquil, with the river lapping gently against its shores and date palms swaying in the breeze. Yet beneath its serene surface lies a history dense with secrets, unanswered questions, and the lingering presence of forces long gone. Elephantine was a critical outpost of Upper Egypt, a first line of defense against incursions from Nubia, and a center of trade, religion, and administration. Archaeological excavations have revealed fortresses, granaries, and temples dedicated to Khnum, the ram-headed god of creation, who was believed to control the Nile's inundation and the fertility of the land. The island was also a center of pilgrimage, where offerings were made to deities and rituals conducted to ensure harmony between the natural world and human society. Yet despite its documented importance, Elephantine continues to confound historians. Why did such a relatively small island hold such an enduring position in Egypt's political, economic, and spiritual life? And what mysteries remain hidden beneath the sands and stones of its temples and settlements? One of the island's most striking enigmas is its stratified history. Layers of construction and rebuilding, stretching from the pre-dynastic period through the New Kingdom and into later dynasties, create a palimpsest of human activity. Temples dedicated to Khnum and other gods were expanded, modified, and rebuilt, sometimes over the foundations of earlier structures, leaving behind architectural anomalies that suggest ritual or symbolic reasoning beyond mere practicality. Some walls are unusually thick, others angled or aligned in ways that defy conventional urban planning, hinting at knowledge of geomancy, celestial observation, or perhaps secret ceremonial purposes. Could these architectural peculiarities encode knowledge lost to time? Or were they expressions of localized religious tradition that diverged from mainstream practices? The island is also home to the remains of a mysterious administrative and religious network. Ancient texts, inscribed on stelae and recovered from the temples, record offerings, priestly decrees, and lists of officials, but gaps and ambiguities abound. Certain rulers appear to have invested heavily in Elephantine, yet leave minimal trace elsewhere. Some inscriptions suggest connections with distant regions, hinting at trade or political alliances that are poorly understood today. Scholars have noted that the island's strategic location made it both a border outpost and a cultural crossroads, yet the interplay between local autonomy and central authority remains opaque. Could Elephantine have functioned as a secret hub of knowledge or influence, known only to select priesthoods or royal administrators, its role deliberately obscured in later records? The religious significance of the island deepens the intrigue. Khnum's temple, built and rebuilt over centuries, contains inscriptions that allude to creation, divine authority, and the ordering of the cosmos. Some reliefs depict processions, offerings, and sacred rituals, yet certain symbols remain difficult to interpret, and some chambers appear deliberately restricted, suggesting that not all practices were meant for public knowledge. Did Elephantine harbor esoteric traditions, secret rites of initiation, or knowledge of celestial cycles encoded in temple alignments and inscriptions? And if so, what was the purpose of concealing these mysteries in such a visible yet isolated location? Trade and diplomacy add another layer of unanswered questions. Elephantine was long considered a gateway to Nubia and sub-Saharan Africa, a hub for ivory, gold, and exotic goods. Archaeological evidence shows a mix of Egyptian and foreign artifacts, implying contact, exchange, and perhaps even the settlement of outsiders. Could the island have functioned as more than a military or religious center? Might it have been a place where knowledge, culture, and spiritual practices from distant lands converged, preserved in a way that remains only partially visible to modern researchers? Even the island's natural geography contributes to its mystery. The rocky terrain, shifting sands, and Nile's seasonal flooding create a landscape that both preserves and conceals. Excavations have uncovered hidden tunnels, submerged foundations, and layers of debris that suggest structures lost to time. Some scholars propose that these features may have served ritual, defensive, or symbolic purposes, or perhaps both simultaneously. Could there be chambers or artifacts yet undiscovered beneath the river's shifting currents, waiting to illuminate aspects of Elephantine's sacred and civic life? And if so, what might these findings reveal about the broader patterns of power, faith, and knowledge in ancient Egypt? The mythology surrounding Elephantine also raises questions. The island was associated not only with Khnum, but with a network of deities linked to creation, fertility, and protection. Certain stelae reference sacred cows, mythical battles, and celestial events. Yet these inscriptions are often fragmentary or ambiguous. Some passages imply that the island was a bridge between human and divine realms, a place where ritual, astronomy, and political authority intersected. Was Elephantine merely a regional religious center, or did it hold a deeper symbolic significance, a repository of spiritual knowledge and ceremonial power? And if the latter is true, what motivated its concealment from the historical record in later periods? Walking along the ancient pathways today, one can almost hear the echoes of rituals performed millennia ago, the chants of priests, the movement of sacred barges, the measured steps of officials and pilgrims. The island's stones, worn smooth by centuries of footfalls, seem to hum with memory, yet they resist easy interpretation. Each ruin, each fragment of inscription, each submerged foundation seems to pose the same questions. What has been lost, what deliberately hidden, and what remains waiting to be discovered? The mysteries of Elephantine are compounded by time itself. Centuries of flooding, settlement, and natural erosion have both preserved and obscured its secrets, leaving a landscape that is as enigmatic as it is compelling. Elephantine Island endures as a nexus of the known and unknown, a place where geography, politics, and spirituality intersect, and where each artifact, inscription, and architectural anomaly invites inquiry. Its temples, fortresses, and sacred precincts continue to challenge assumptions about the organization, beliefs, and priorities of ancient Egypt. As we trace the contours of its rocks, imagine the ceremonies of its priests, and consider the gaps in its historical record, we are reminded that even a relatively small island can hold vast mysteries. What stories remain buried beneath the Nile's silt? What knowledge, rituals, or artifacts lie hidden, waiting to illuminate the history of Elephantine and its place in the broader tapestry of Egyptian civilization? And above all, how many truths about this sacred island will remain just out of reach, whispering across the centuries, daring the curious to uncover them? Stretching across the desert horizon south of modern Cairo, the Abu Sur Plateau rises like a silent sentinel above the sands, dotted with the ruins of pyramids that speak of ambition, devotion, and mystery. The pyramids of Abu Sir, smaller and less celebrated than the towering monuments of Giza, seem almost overlooked, yet they hold secrets that challenge our understanding of Egypt's Old Kingdom. Constructed during the 5th Dynasty, these structures mark a period of transition, politically, religiously, and architecturally. Even in their weathered state, the pyramids evoke curiosity. Why were these kings, long overshadowed by their more famous predecessors, laid to rest here in a necropolis that seems both strategic and secluded? Abu Sir's pyramids are remarkable for their precision and, paradoxically, for the anomalies they present. Unlike the smooth, monumental faces of Giza's Great Pyramid, these pyramids were constructed using a combination of limestone blocks and local stone, with cores that appear less refined and their dimensions deliberately varied. Archaeologists have long debated whether this reflects changes in architectural knowledge, economic constraints, or ritual significance. Some of the pyramids are surrounded by sunken temples, mortuary chapels, and subsidiary tombs for queens and officials, forming a complex network that suggests a carefully planned sacred landscape. Yet the alignment of these structures raises questions. Why do certain pyramids deviate slightly from the cardinal points, while others appear to follow celestial patterns? Could these orientations have served purposes beyond ritual and visibility, perhaps encoding knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, or cosmology that is now lost to us? The most striking pyramid, belonging to Pharaoh Djoser, presents both clarity and ambiguity. Its mortuary temple, decorated with inscriptions and reliefs, conveys a sense of divine kingship and ritual order. Yet even here, gaps emerge. Certain hieroglyphs are incomplete, others deliberately erased or left unfinished. Scholars speculate that political upheaval or the shifting power of the priesthood may have influenced these omissions. Were these gaps merely administrative, or do they hint at internal conflicts, contested claims, or even deliberate concealment of knowledge? Djoser's pyramid, like others at Abu Sir, exists as both a monument to the past and a puzzle, challenging historians to reconcile physical evidence with the fragmented historical record. Abu Sir also holds a mystery in its very choice of location. The plateau offers commanding views of the Nile, yet is separated from major population centers and the bustling heart of Memphis. Some Egyptologists suggest the site was chosen for practical reasons, proximity to quarries and administrative centers. Others propose symbolic reasoning, a liminal space between life and death, the river and the desert, the earthly and the divine. Could the placement itself have encoded ritual meaning, known only to the priests and architects who designed these funerary complexes? And if so, what knowledge, now obscured by time, did these kings hope to preserve in stone and sand? The pyramid complexes are also surrounded by subsidiary tombs, often attributed to queens, high officials, and royal relatives. These tombs contain artifacts, ceramics, jewelry, and statues that are consistent with the era yet sometimes exhibit unusual craftsmanship or stylistic anomalies. Certain reliefs depict symbolic scenes of the afterlife, agricultural offerings, and celestial phenomena, but with subtle variations from contemporary standards. Are these deviations purely artistic, or could they represent localized ritual practices or esoteric knowledge passed down within a select group of priests? The more one studies Abu Sir, the more it seems to be a landscape of both the familiar and the enigmatic, a place where conventional interpretations reach their limits. Another point of intrigue is the relative scarcity of monumental texts compared to Giza or Saqqara. While some inscriptions document kings' accomplishments, religious devotion, and offerings to the gods, many surfaces are blank or weathered, leaving gaps in the historical narrative. Could these omissions reflect the political instability of the Fifth Dynasty, the declining influence of royal authority, or simply the ravages of time? Or is it possible that certain knowledge was deliberately concealed, encoded within architectural alignments, numerical relationships, or symbolic representations that modern researchers are only beginning to recognize? Even the construction techniques of Abu Sir's pyramids provoke questions. Blocks were carefully cut, yet some cores exhibit unevenness or irregularity. Certain structural elements suggest experimentation, perhaps innovations in construction methods or adaptations to local geology. Did the architects of Abu Sir inherit techniques from Giza, or were they deliberately exploring new methods of construction and ritual space? And could these subtleties contain meaning beyond the practical, a coded reflection of spiritual or cosmic principles? The surrounding desert adds its own layer of mystery. Sand has both preserved and concealed. Shifting dunes cover subsidiary tombs, ritual structures, and possible hidden chambers. Early explorers reported tunnels, partially collapsed corridors, and subterranean chambers that may remain unexplored. Could these spaces hold artifacts, inscriptions, or evidence of ceremonies that would shed light on Abu Sir's enigmatic history? And if so, what secrets might lie buried, waiting for patient eyes and careful excavation to reveal them? Walking across the plateau today, one feels the passage of millennia in a palpable way. The smaller pyramids, their temples, and surrounding tombs create a landscape that is at once monumental and intimate, precise yet enigmatic. Sunlight glances off limestone surfaces, casting shadows across reliefs and corridors, and the silence is profound, broken only by the wind across sand and stone. Abu Sur evokes both awe and curiosity, a testament to human ambition, religious devotion, and the enduring allure of mystery. The enigmatic pyramids of Abu Sur endure as reminders that even in a civilization as extensively studied as ancient Egypt, entire chapters of history remain partially obscured. They challenge assumptions about royal power, architectural evolution, and the symbolic landscape of the Old Kingdom. Every alignment, every relief, and every gap in the record invites reflection. What knowledge, spiritual practice, or political narrative was preserved in these stones? What has been lost to time, and what remains waiting just beneath the sand to illuminate the hidden complexities of this lesser-known necropolis? Abu Sur is more than a collection of pyramids. It is a silent witness to the ambitions, beliefs, and unanswered questions of an era that continues to captivate the imagination of scholars and observers alike. Amid the ruins of Akhetaten, the city built on the eastern bank of the Nile by Pharaoh Akhenaten, lies evidence not just of monumental architecture, but of a network of communication that stretched across the ancient world. Scattered across museums and collections, these clay tablets, inscribed in cuneiform and collectively known as the Amarna Letters, offer an intimate glimpse into the political, diplomatic, and social currents of the 14th century BCE. Yet beyond their tangible surface, they evoke questions that continue to perplex scholars. What truths, conflicts, and secrets do these letters conceal, and how much of the story has already been lost to time? The Amarna Letters were discovered in the late 19th century at the site of Akhetaten, today called Tel el Amarna in Middle Egypt. They were found in the ruins of the city's administrative center, carefully stored in jars, as if awaiting an audience long forgotten. The letters themselves are composed of clay, inscribed with delicate cuneiform script, a language foreign to Egypt, borrowed from Mesopotamia, yet widely understood by the scribes who navigated the ancient world's complex diplomatic landscape. Each tablet is a message, a plea, a record of tribute, or a subtle warning sent from kings, governors, and officials across the Levant, Canaan, and beyond, addressed to Pharaoh Akhenaten or his courtiers. The texts are practical, detailed, and precise, yet their preservation hints at an awareness of the importance of record-keeping and the fragility of human alliances. The content of the letters paints a portrait of a world both interconnected and precarious. Tributes of gold, silver, and exotic commodities were requested, reports of rebellion were documented, and urgent appeals for military assistance or diplomatic intervention appear alongside instructions on protocol, gift-giving, and negotiation. Through these tablets, the distant reaches of the Egyptian Empire and those territories under its influence come alive with voices of rulers navigating the delicate balance between autonomy and subordination. Yet for all the clarity they provide, the letters also raise questions. Why are some correspondences detailed while others are fragmentary or cryptic? Were these omissions intentional or the result of decay over time? And what does the tone of certain letters, pleading, deferential, even anxious, reveal about the nature of international politics in a period of profound transition? One of the most striking features of the Amarna Letters is their focus on the fragile relationships between Egypt and its neighbors. Cities and kingdoms that once held considerable independence are depicted negotiating survival under the looming presence of Egyptian authority. Some letters describe conflicts among vassal states, while others detail disputes over land, trade routes, and resources. Certain correspondences hint at espionage, betrayal, or subterfuge as rulers attempted to navigate shifting alliances and consolidate power. Could these letters be telling us more than the official record? Do they encode, beneath the formal pleasantries, the anxieties, fears, and strategies of a geopolitical landscape that was far from stable. The letters also reveal a complex bureaucracy, with scribes trained to manage both the diplomatic form and the subtlety of tone required in international correspondence. Certain phrases, repeated across multiple tablets, suggest a formulaic approach to etiquette, yet deviations appear, perhaps revealing personal expression, urgency, or concealed meaning. Scholars have debated whether these nuances were deliberate, signaling hidden messages intelligible only to the initiated, or whether they simply reflect individual scribes' styles. Could there have been a system of coded communication embedded within these letters, a method by which vassal kings conveyed sensitive information while maintaining appearances of deference? The physical form of the tablets themselves adds another layer of intrigue. The clay, carefully shaped and inscribed with stylus, was baked to ensure durability. Some tablets are broken, worn, or missing entirely, leaving gaps in the historical record. Others appear to have been deliberately archived, preserved in jars with care, suggesting an awareness of their long-term importance. Were these archives intended solely for administrative purposes, or did they also serve a ritual or symbolic function, preserving the word of the king and the empire in a form that could endure the centuries? The historical context of the Amarna Letters deepens the mystery. Akhenaten's reign was one of radical religious reform, with a dramatic shift toward the worship of Aten, the sun disk, supplanting traditional polytheism. Yet these letters, largely diplomatic and administrative, are almost silent on religion, focusing instead on the practicalities of governance and foreign relations. Does this omission reflect Akhenaten's focus on internal reforms, leaving diplomacy to trusted officials? Or could it hint at deliberate separation, a compartmentalization of sacred and secular concerns in a way that preserved both political and religious authority? Even the geographical spread of the letters is remarkable. Correspondents hailed from Babylon, Assyria, Mitanni, Canaan, and Cyprus, regions separated by hundreds of miles and often embroiled in local conflicts. The effort required to transmit these letters, ensuring both accuracy and timeliness, underscores the sophistication of the Egyptian and regional administrative networks. Could there have been elements of intelligence gathering, coded instructions, or hidden allegiances within these communications? And if so, what might remain undetected in the fragments that have survived, as opposed to those long lost to the sands of time? Walking among the ruins of Tel El Amarna today, it is easy to imagine the bustling activity of scribes, couriers, and officials, clay tablets inscribed with careful hands, messages dispatched across the ancient world, voices from distant lands conveyed to the Egyptian court. The letters, though mute to modern eyes without translation, seem to pulse with the urgency, diplomacy, and human drama of their time. And yet, for all that we can read and interpret, questions persist. What secrets remain in the letters that are damaged, missing, or undeciphered? What relationships, intrigues, or conflicts have slipped through the gaps in the record? And how many aspects of this ancient international network, so vividly captured on clay, remain beyond our understanding? The Amarna Letters endure as both historical record and enigma. They are tangible artifacts of diplomacy, administration, and human interaction. Yet they also speak of absence, the fragments lost, the messages we cannot read, the subtext that may never be fully understood. Each tablet is a voice from the past, a testament to the complexity of ancient politics, and a reminder that even the most meticulous records leave gaps. As we examine the clay inscriptions, consider the journeys they made, and imagine the world they represent, we are invited to contemplate not only what we know, but what remains hidden, the full scope of alliances, the secrets of foreign courts, and the untold stories that these silent letters still guard across the millennia. Beneath the tranquil surface of the Mediterranean, off the coast of Egypt near the ancient city of Canopus, whispers of a forgotten world linger. The sea, with its gentle waves and shifting sands, conceals ruins that hint at grandeur long submerged, structures that may have once thrived as part of a city of immense ritual and civic importance. Today, divers and archaeologists speak cautiously of these remains. Massive stone foundations, toppled columns, and scattered artifacts lie on the seafloor, shrouded in silt and shadow. To look upon them is to confront the tantalizing possibility that a portion of ancient Egypt's history, thought lost to time, endures silently underwater, waiting for those with patience and technology to uncover its secrets. The legend of the submerged city is entwined with the stories of the pharaohs themselves. Ancient sources speak of Canopus as a thriving port, a center of commerce, ritual, and interaction between Egyptians, Greeks, and later Romans. Archaeologists have long noted references to temples and palatial complexes dedicated to gods like Osiris, Isis, and Serapis. Yet beneath the waters, these descriptions seem to gain an almost mythical resonance. Walls that once housed sacred rituals, stone pathways that connected sacred precincts, and colossal statues now broken and scattered, each fragment hinting at the scale and importance of the site, but offering frustratingly few answers about how or why it was abandoned. Historical evidence suggests that seismic activity, rising sea levels, and natural subsidence may have contributed to the gradual submersion of parts of Canopus and neighboring sites. The Nile Delta, a dynamic and unstable landscape, has shifted dramatically over millennia, its waters reclaiming land once occupied by humans. Ancient records also describe periods of flooding and coastal erosion, events that may have submerged port areas and temple precincts. Yet the precision and extent of the structures found underwater often defy expectations. Why were these buildings constructed in such alignment with the coastline, only to eventually sink beneath it? Were the locations chosen for religious or symbolic reasons, to place temples at the boundary between land and water, the human and divine? Or were these alignments simply a reflection of a city meticulously planned to maximize trade and access to the Nile? Diving into the site, one encounters remnants that are both awe-inspiring and perplexing. Massive limestone blocks, eroded by salt and current, bear inscriptions and reliefs that are faint yet discernible, suggesting a sophisticated culture of writing and commemoration. Column bases, once supporting grand temples, hint at interiors designed to impress, to inspire reverence, and perhaps to conceal knowledge. Pottery shards, tools, and jewelry scattered among the ruins indicate daily life, ritual activity, and a connection to wider trade networks, yet the city's sudden disappearance remains unexplained. Were these remains abandoned gradually over centuries, or was there a sudden event, a natural catastrophe or political collapse, that forced the inhabitants to leave and never return? Modern exploration has added layers of mystery. Sonar scans, underwater photography, and submersible probes reveal linear streets, temple foundations, and what appears to be a planned urban layout, as if the city had been meticulously designed before the water claimed it. Yet the artifacts recovered from these submerged sites are fragmentary, often corroded or displaced, leaving gaps in the narrative. Certain inscriptions reference rituals, dedications, and even legendary figures, yet many of these texts are partially illegible or destroyed. Scholars debate whether the underwater ruins represent a single city, multiple settlements, or a sacred precinct connected to the worship of the Nile itself. Could the water have been considered part of the city's spiritual topography, an element incorporated deliberately into religious practice, or is its submersion purely the result of natural forces beyond human control? The symbolic resonance of the city adds another layer of intrigue. Egyptian cosmology often linked water with creation, the cyclical flooding of the Nile with the life-giving powers of the gods. Temples near the coast may have been deliberately constructed to interface with water as a sacred medium, a bridge between the mortal world and divine realms. Some researchers have speculated that certain submerged structures were not only functional but also ritualistic, designed to host ceremonies that integrated the sea itself. Could the city's partial submersion have been anticipated or even ritually significant, a way of aligning sacred architecture with celestial or aquatic cycles? Or is the presence of these ruins underwater merely the result of millennia of shifting land, tides, and sediment? Artifacts recovered from the site only deepen the mystery. Statues, amulets, and fragments of ceremonial objects suggest a culture rich in artistry and devotion. Some pieces exhibit stylistic influences that seem to bridge Egyptian and Greek traditions, implying a cosmopolitan population and a city engaged in far-reaching cultural exchanges. Others bear unusual markings, patterns, or inscriptions that resist easy interpretation, hinting at practices or knowledge that may have been restricted to the initiated, the elite, or the priesthood. What stories did these objects hold in their original context, and what truths might be revealed if the rest of the city could be fully excavated? Even the scale of the ruins is puzzling. Certain foundations suggest structures of monumental size, far larger than those expected for a port town or minor settlement. Columns toppled by centuries of water movement hint at halls and ceremonial spaces that rival the grandeur of more famous Egyptian temples. Why, then, does history remember this city primarily as a footnote, overshadowed by Thebes, Memphis, and Alexandria? Was its disappearance sudden enough to erase memory, or gradual, leaving only fragments in texts and the landscape itself? Today, diving into these ruins is an exercise in patience and imagination. The water muffles sound, shifts light, and distorts scale, creating an atmosphere both serene and otherworldly. Every stone seems imbued with history, yet every shadow conceals unanswered questions. As archaeologists and explorers trace temple layouts, document inscriptions, and map foundations, it becomes clear that what remains is only a fraction of what once was. Could there be deeper, fully submerged structures, sealed chambers, or artifacts hidden beneath layers of silt, waiting to illuminate the life, religion, and political structure of this lost city? And if so, what might these discoveries tell us about the ambitions, beliefs, and mysteries of the pharaohs themselves? The hidden underwater city of the pharaohs endures as a testament to both the permanence and fragility of human achievement. Its stones are silent, yet their arrangement, their alignment, and their inscriptions whisper of lives once lived, rituals once performed, and a civilization attuned to both land and water. Every column, foundation, and artifact recovered offers a fragment of knowledge, yet the broader picture remains tantalizingly incomplete. As we peer through the currents, imagine the ceremonies performed in halls now beneath the waves, and consider the forces, both natural and human, that have reshaped the landscape. We are reminded that history is never fully static, and that even the most enduring civilizations leave traces that challenge comprehension and invite wonder. The city under the waves is more than a ruin. It is an enigma, a submerged echo of a civilization whose reach extended across rivers, deserts, and seas. It prompts us to ask, how much of the pharaoh's world remains hidden, obscured by water, sand, or time itself? What sacred knowledge, political history, or artistry lies buried beneath the tides? And as we study the fragments that surface, both literally and metaphorically, are we glimpsing only a shadow of a civilization whose full story awaits discovery, just beneath the waves? In the hushed corridors of Egypt's earliest history, where the first dynasties took shape along the banks of the Nile, one artifact stands out with a striking, almost enigmatic presence: the King Scorpion Macehead. Carved from a single piece of limestone, its surface bears a scene both ceremonial and cryptic, depicting a ruler whose identity and deeds straddle the line between history and legend. Unlike the tombs and temples that dominate the archaeological record, this object is intimate in scale yet monumental in implication, a ceremonial macehead that conveys authority, ritual, and mystery in equal measure. To hold it in one's imagination is to peer into the dawn of Egyptian kingship, a time when the symbols of power were being defined, recorded, and immortalized in stone. The macehead itself was discovered in the temple precinct at Hierakonpolis, one of the earliest major urban centers of pre-dynastic Egypt. Its discovery in the late 19th century shocked scholars for the level of detail and sophistication displayed on an object from this formative period was unexpected. The carved relief shows a king, known to modern scholars as Scorpion due to the glyph atop his head, performing a ritual that has been interpreted as irrigation, ceremonial triumph, or perhaps a symbolic act of unification. Surrounding him are attendants, standards, and a multitude of objects whose precise meaning continues to elude modern interpretation. Even the depiction of the landscape, with rivers, gardens, and agricultural plots, hints at a worldview that intertwined divine authority with the rhythms of the natural world. But what exactly does this scene reveal? And what was the significance of this macehead in the context of early Egyptian society? The dating of the artifact adds to its intrigue. The Scorpion Macehead is generally attributed to the late pre-dynastic period, roughly 3,200 to 3000 BCE, centuries before the consolidation of power under the First Dynasty. This was a time when rulers were asserting control over cities, cultivating the Nile's fertile banks, and beginning the complex system of hieroglyphic recording. The imagery of the macehead reflects this transitional era, capturing a moment when kingship was both political and religious, territorial and symbolic. Yet despite the context, the identity of King Scorpion himself remains elusive. Was he a ruler of a single city-state, a regional hegemon, or a figure whose legacy merged with myth in later retellings? The artifact preserves his presence, but history offers only fragments, leaving his true story tantalizingly incomplete. The ritual depicted on the macehead has generated considerable debate. Some scholars suggest that the king is engaged in ceremonial irrigation, pouring water onto the land as a metaphor for life and fertility, a visual declaration of his divine role in ensuring agricultural abundance. Others interpret the scene as a conquest tableau, a representation of military power and political dominance, with attendants and standards symbolizing subjugated regions. Certain details, however, resist straightforward interpretation. Unusual iconography, repetitive motifs, and what appear to be symbolic animals that may encode religious or cosmological knowledge. Could the macehead have functioned as a mnemonic device, preserving a ritual code understood only by the king and his closest advisors? Or does it convey a broader propagandistic message designed to legitimize emerging dynastic authority? The craftsmanship of the artifact is equally compelling. The carving is remarkably detailed, considering its size and the tools likely available at the time. Figures are proportionally balanced, gestures are deliberate, and hieroglyphic symbols are etched with precision. This level of sophistication suggests that Hierakonpolis was a cultural and technological center capable of producing highly skilled artisans, even in the pre-dynastic period. Yet the techniques used to achieve such refinement, tools, training, and symbolic conventions, remain only partially understood. How were such artisans trained, and what cultural or spiritual knowledge guided their work? Could some of these methods or meanings have been lost entirely, preserved only in fragments such as this macehead? Further mysteries emerge when considering the Macehead's purpose. It is ceremonial, not a weapon, yet it conveys authority and power in a tangible form. In early Egyptian culture, ceremonial objects often served dual functions: practical and symbolic, political and spiritual. Could the scorpion macehead have been a central piece in rituals of kingship, a tangible tool used to communicate divine sanction to both subjects and gods? Or was it an emblem of personal legacy, intended to project the king's presence across generations, long after his reign had ended? The absence of accompanying textual records leaves these questions open, allowing speculation to coexist with established historical context. The imagery itself raises questions about cultural continuity. Certain elements on the macehead, the depiction of irrigation channels, ritual vessels, and processional standards, appear in later dynastic iconography, suggesting that King Scorpion's reign may have set precedents for subsequent Egyptian ceremonial practice. Yet other features, such as enigmatic animal motifs or abstract designs, do not reappear in later periods, hinting at localized or experimental traditions that were never fully institutionalized. What knowledge or symbolism did these unique elements encode, and why were they ultimately abandoned or transformed in later iconography? Even the scale and positioning of the scene invite curiosity. The king dominates the composition, yet attendants, animals, and symbols are arranged with deliberate care, creating a visual hierarchy that conveys authority, ritual importance, and cosmological order. The river's depiction may reference the Nile itself, yet its relationship to the ceremonial act is ambiguous. Was this a literal depiction of an agricultural event, a symbolic act linking divine and earthly power, or a composite of both? And if symbolic, what principles guided the integration of landscape, ritual, and rulership into a coherent visual narrative? Standing before the macehead, either in the museum or in imagination, one is struck by its dual nature. It is both concrete and elusive, historical and mythic. Every figure, every glyph, and every line of relief conveys information, yet also leaves room for uncertainty. The artifact is a window into the dawn of Egyptian civilization, yet the full picture remains obscured. Its existence reminds us that history is rarely linear or complete, and that artifacts, no matter how detailed, can preserve knowledge even as they conceal it. The King Scorpion Macehead endures as both a document of power and an enigma. It tells us that early Egypt was a world of ritual, politics, and artistry, yet it also leaves questions unanswered. Who exactly was King Scorpion, and what were the precise meanings of the ceremonies he performed? Were the symbols inscribed on the macehead intended to communicate with the gods, the populace, or both? And perhaps most tantalizing of all, what other artifacts, lost or undiscovered, might exist that could illuminate the life and reign of a ruler whose legacy teeters between history and legend? Even as scholars analyze its details, the macehead continues to challenge assumptions. Its lines and reliefs, carved thousands of years ago, speak across time, reminding us that the earliest chapters of Egyptian civilization were already complex, layered, and enigmatic. It is a silent testament to human ingenuity, authority, and the perpetual tension between what can be known and what remains hidden, a small object that opens vast vistas of mystery. In contemplating the King Scorpion Macehead, we are invited to reflect not only on the origins of kingship, but also on the enduring questions of interpretation, meaning, and discovery. How much of the early pre-dynastic world remains lost to time? What rituals, symbols, and practices shaped the rise of the pharaohs? And what fragments of knowledge, like the Scorpion Macehead itself, survive to challenge, inspire, and intrigue us centuries later? In this silent limestone, carved with care, the echoes of an ancient ruler continue to whisper, urging the curious to look deeper ask harder, and imagine what secrets the earliest dynasties may still conceal. On the fertile banks of the Nile, where the river broadens and life flourishes under the Egyptian sun, history first consolidated its power in the figure of Narmer, a ruler often credited as the unifier of Upper and Lower Egypt. The evidence of his reign is both tangible and elusive. Artifacts, ceremonial objects, and inscriptions point to a king whose influence shaped the trajectory of an entire civilization, yet his personal story is largely veiled in myth and ambiguity. Among these relics, the Narmer palette stands as a cornerstone of our understanding, a ceremonial object carved with care, its reliefs telling a story of conquest, ritual, and political transformation. Yet beyond the surface of this artifact, deeper questions emerge. Who was Narmer, really? Was he a singular ruler, a symbolic figure, or the embodiment of a process that extended beyond one lifetime? The Narmer palette, discovered at the Temple of Horus in Hierakonpolis, is imposing in its scale and intricate in its detail. On one side, Narmer is depicted wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt, striking down a foe with deliberate precision, while attendants and standards march in orderly procession. On the other, he dons the red crown of Lower Egypt, presiding over captives and ceremonial displays, suggesting the unification of two distinct regions into a single kingdom. The palette's artistry conveys authority and ritual sophistication, yet even these visual cues invite speculation. Does the act of conquest depicted represent a historical campaign, a symbolic consolidation, or a blend of both? And how much of the narrative was crafted to reinforce a nascent ideology of kingship? Historical context lends partial clarity but deepens mystery. Narmer is traditionally associated with the late pre-dynastic period, around 3100 BCE, a time of significant political consolidation in the Nile Valley. Cities such as Hierakonpolis, Abydos, and Tanis were competing centers of power, with local rulers asserting control over surrounding territories. The Narmer palette and other artifacts suggest a deliberate effort to centralize authority, establish religious legitimacy, and codify symbols of rulership. Yet very few contemporaneous records survive, and subsequent dynasties often retroactively elevated earlier figures into legendary status. Was Narmer a real historical actor, a composite of multiple leaders, or an idealized representation of the emerging institution of kingship? Artifacts beyond the palette add layers to the enigma. Ceremonial maceheads, like the scorpion macehead discussed earlier, inscriptions on pottery, and early tombs point to a period of experimentation in administration, religious symbolism, and monumental construction. Narmer appears in multiple contexts: as a military leader, a priest, a divine intermediary, and an architect of political order. Yet these roles blur together. Was Narmer primarily a conqueror, a spiritual authority, or both? And to what extent did the artisans, scribes, and priesthoods who immortalized his image shape the narrative we inherit today? The iconography on the Narmer palette itself raises compelling questions. Animals, symbols, and geometric motifs are arranged with deliberate care, suggesting a visual language meant to communicate power, order, and perhaps cosmic significance. The intertwined depictions of bulls, rosettes, and serpopards, mythical creatures with serpent-like necks, hint at layers of meaning that are partially intelligible and partially lost. Were these symbols meant to record historical events, codify religious beliefs, or convey abstract concepts of sovereignty and divine protection? And if they encode specific knowledge, who would have understood it fully? The elite scribes, the priesthood, or a broader audience? The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under Narmer also carries broader implications. Archaeological evidence points to coordinated settlement patterns, standardized pottery, and centralized administration emerging around this time. Trade networks expanded, and ritual practices began to reflect a unified ideological framework. Yet the speed, method, and extent of this consolidation remain uncertain. Did Narmer achieve unity through military conquest, political marriage, negotiation, or a combination of strategies? And what of the cultural and religious practices of the people he ruled? How were these integrated, transformed, or suppressed in the process? Even the Narmer tomb at Abydos, long thought to belong to him, raises questions. While large and elaborately prepared, it provides limited direct evidence about his life, achievements, or personal beliefs. Some scholars argue that it reflects the ceremonial expectations of early kingship rather than a literal record of Narmer himself. Could the tomb be more symbolic than practical, constructed to assert legitimacy and continuity for future dynasties? And if so, what truths about the man, or concept, of Narmer remain hidden beneath layers of ritual and interpretation? The interplay between myth and history is central to Narmer's enduring fascination. Later kings and scribes invoked his legacy, embedding him in origin stories that blended fact and legend. The imagery of unification, divine sanction, and ritual supremacy became a template for pharaohs who followed, suggesting that Narmer was not only a historical figure, but also a symbol of kingship itself. Could it be that the real Narmer was less important than the idea of Narmer, the embodiment of order emerging from chaos, of authority legitimized through ritual and imagery? And if so, how does this duality shape our interpretation of artifacts attributed to him? Even today, scholars debate whether Narmer's reign represents a single individual or a transitional period encompassing multiple leaders whose actions were later merged into a singular narrative. The scarcity of written records, the ceremonial nature of surviving artifacts, and the symbolic complexity of iconography all contribute to this ambiguity. Could there have been other rulers, contemporaries or predecessors, whose contributions were absorbed into the legend of Narmer? And what might be revealed by future discoveries? Uncovered tombs, inscriptions, or objects that could clarify the origins of Egyptian kingship. Standing before the Narmer palette, whether in a museum display or in mental reconstruction, one is struck by its duality. A tangible object, carved in stone, yet simultaneously a vessel of myth, power, and unresolved questions. Its figures, symbols, and reliefs speak of conquest, authority, and ritual, but they also challenge modern scholars to discern historical reality from symbolic narrative. Narmer's story, partially visible yet largely hidden, exemplifies the delicate balance between evidence and interpretation in the study of early Egypt. Narmer endures as a symbol, a king, and a mystery. He represents the moment when Upper and Lower Egypt coalesced into a single political and spiritual entity, yet the man behind the symbols, the reality behind the rituals, remains tantalizingly out of reach. His artifacts are not merely historical records. They are invitations to explore, question, and imagine the origins of one of the world's most enduring civilizations. Who was Narmer, really? Was he the first pharaoh as we understand the term, or the culmination of a process, a figurehead shaped by the hands of those who recorded him? And what other remnants of his reign, still hidden in tombs, temples, or forgotten sites, might one day shed light on the dawn of Egyptian kingship? In contemplating Narmer, we are reminded that the earliest chapters of Egypt's story are both fragile and profound. Artifacts survive, yet their meanings remain layered, complex, and occasionally elusive. And as we piece together the fragments, palettes, tombs, inscriptions, and ceremonial objects, we are compelled to acknowledge the mystery at the heart of history, that even the first pharaoh, whose deeds set the foundation for millennia, continues to challenge, inspire, and invite curiosity across the ages. In the arid sands of Giza, where the monumental pyramids rise like timeless sentinels against the sky, a quieter, more elusive mystery endures: the lost tomb of Queen Hetepheres. Unlike the grandeur of the Great Pyramid or the imposing Sphinx, Hetepheres' story is whispered through fragments, a puzzle pieced together from archaeology, inscriptions, and tantalizing artifacts. She was the mother of Pharaoh Khufu, builder of the Great Pyramid, yet the resting place of this influential queen has evaded discovery, leaving only questions about her life, her status, and the treasures she may have carried into the afterlife. To explore her tomb is to confront the limits of knowledge and the delicate traces of human ambition, devotion, and ritual preserved in the sands of time. The story begins in 1925, when archaeologists uncovered a hidden shaft near the Great Pyramid. Within it lay the remnants of an extraordinary burial, carefully arranged and exquisitely preserved. A wooden coffin, gold ornaments, alabaster vessels, and intricate jewelry pointed unmistakably to royalty. Some pieces, adorned with inscriptions, identified Hetepheres, confirming the tomb's occupant. Yet the tomb itself had been robbed in antiquity, leaving little of the architecture intact. It was as if the queen had been buried in a hidden chamber, only to be partially erased by the hand of history. How could such a prominent figure, mother of the pharaoh who oversaw one of the most ambitious construction projects in human history, end up in a tomb so impermanent, so vulnerable to looting? And what secrets did the missing sections conceal? The artifacts recovered from the burial shaft are extraordinary in their craftsmanship and significance. Golden diadems, finely carved alabaster vessels, and ceremonial furniture testify to Hetepheres' status and the sophistication of artisanship in early 4th Dynasty Egypt. Some objects suggest ritual use designed to assist the queen in her journey to the afterlife, while others reflect domestic luxury, bridging the intimate and the ceremonial. Among these treasures was a delicate chair, carefully constructed with mortise and tenon joints, which remains a marvel of ancient woodworking. Each artifact invites questions about daily life, religious practice, and the subtle interplay between private devotion and public authority. What did these objects mean to Hetepheres herself, and to the priests and craftsmen who prepared her burial? Were they simply symbols of wealth, or did they encode specific spiritual or ritual knowledge now lost? The placement of Hetepheres' tomb itself has been a source of fascination. Unlike the sprawling pyramids or grand necropolises, her burial site appears intentionally discreet. Some scholars suggest that her tomb may have been originally intended within or adjacent to Khufu's pyramid complex, possibly as part of a broader vision of dynastic continuity. Yet geological shifts, construction decisions, or political considerations may have altered the original plan, leaving the queen's final resting place partially hidden, partially destroyed. Could this displacement have been deliberate, reflecting changes in ritual practice, dynastic priorities, or even security concerns in response to tomb robbery? And if so, what does it reveal about the ways in which early Egyptians negotiated the sacred and the political? Hetepheres' burial also raises questions about mortuary practices and the symbolism of death. The queen's coffin and accompanying artifacts suggest adherence to highly codified funerary conventions. The careful alignment of objects, the use of specific materials, and the inclusion of items designed to ensure protection, sustenance, and continuity in the afterlife. Yet some features of her burial are unusual. Certain objects appear almost experimental, hinting at evolving beliefs about kingship, gender, and divine protection. Could Hetepheres' tomb represent a transitional moment in funerary architecture, reflecting innovation in ritual practice or shifts in theological understanding? And what might this imply about the role of queens in shaping early dynastic ideology? The mysterious fate of the tomb complicates the narrative further. Archaeological evidence suggests that the burial chamber may have been looted shortly after interment, with some scholars speculating that tomb robbers were acting under the cover of political upheaval or dynastic transition. Other theories propose that parts of the tomb may have collapsed due to structural failure, leaving the queen's remains and artifacts partially hidden beneath rubble. How much of Hetepheres' burial was lost to human intervention, and how much to the inexorable forces of time and nature? Could there still be undiscovered chambers, sealed niches, or hidden artifacts that have eluded every generation of archaeologist and adventurer? Even the inscriptions and iconography associated with Hetepheres provide tantalizing yet incomplete clues. Titles, epithets, and ceremonial motifs hint at her influence, her relationship to the pharaoh, and her role within the complex hierarchy of the royal court. Yet, the scarcity of surviving textual evidence leaves these hints fragmentary, encouraging speculation. Did Hetepheres wield significant political authority behind the scenes, influencing decisions of state and religious policy? Or was her power primarily symbolic, ceremonial, and dynastic, expressed through ritual rather than governance? The artifacts themselves offer indirect testimony, yet the full picture remains obscured by the passage of millennia. The story of Hetepheres also intersects with broader mysteries of early dynastic Egypt. Her life coincided with the monumental ambitions of the Fourth Dynasty, including the construction of the Great Pyramid. How did the queen navigate this era of architectural and religious innovation? Did her burial reflect personal preference, political necessity, or dynastic ideology? And what might her lost tomb reveal about the ways in which royal women contributed to the construction, ritual, and administration of early Egyptian civilization? Even today, the queen's burial site continues to provoke wonder. Archaeologists, using remote sensing, careful excavation, and historical cross-referencing, have pieced together fragments of her life and death, yet the tomb itself resists full reconstruction. Its mysteries endure. The missing chambers, the scattered artifacts, the looted or displaced treasures, all suggest a story partially hidden and partially revealed, a narrative shaped as much by what survives as by what has vanished. Could further exploration, or even advances in technology, reveal the full extent of her resting place? And if so, what might this tell us about the rituals, beliefs, and societal structures of early dynastic Egypt? The lost tomb of Queen Hetepheres endures as both a historical enigma and a symbol of the fragility of human endeavor. It reminds us that even those closest to the power of pharaohs, queens, advisors, and priests, can leave traces that survive only partially, fragments suspended in time. The tomb challenges assumptions about preservation, authority, and the impermanence of even the most carefully constructed monuments. In Hetepheres' burial, we find evidence of ritual, artistry, and devotion, yet we are confronted equally by absence, the gaps in the archaeological record, the missing chambers, and the artifacts that may yet lie hidden beneath centuries of sand. To contemplate Queen Hetepheres' tomb is to engage with the enduring tension between presence and absence, between what is known and what is forever lost. Her story, imperfectly preserved, tantalizingly incomplete, invites reflection on the fragility of memory, the impermanence of human constructions, and the ways in which history can simultaneously reveal and conceal. Where exactly did Hetepheres rest? What treasures, texts, or ritual objects remain undiscovered? And perhaps most compellingly, what truths about the life of this influential queen and the dynasty she helped shape remain hidden, waiting to emerge from the sands that have so long kept her secrets? The lost tomb of Queen Hetepheres is more than an archaeological curiosity. It is a meditation on the limits of our knowledge, the endurance of legacy, and the mysteries that continue to hover at the margins of history. Its story encourages us to look closer, think deeper, and imagine the extraordinary lives and objects that remain just out of reach, whispering across millennia to those willing to wonder. In the sands of Saqqara, beyond the towering step of Djoser's pyramid, lie the faint traces of a structure that time has all but swallowed, the lost temple of Pharaoh Djoser. Unlike the monumental step pyramid that dominates the necropolis, the temple itself was designed not to awe with height, but to guide, contain, and channel ritual power. Excavations have revealed fragments of walls, foundations, and ceremonial pathways, yet much of the temple has been eroded, buried, or dismantled over centuries. To encounter its remnants is to enter a space once teeming with sacred activity, a place where architecture, ritual, and cosmology converged in ways that continue to puzzle historians and archaeologists alike. Djoser, the second king of Egypt's third dynasty, is widely credited with commissioning the first pyramid, a bold architectural experiment that marked a turning point in royal tomb design. But alongside this innovation, he oversaw the construction of a temple complex whose full scope remains elusive. Early accounts suggest that the temple was part of a vast funerary precinct, complete with courtyards, chapels, and ceremonial halls, each space carefully oriented and aligned according to principles of cosmic order. Yet despite the importance of these rituals, little of the temple survives intact. Was its destruction the inevitable result of natural decay, later construction projects, or deliberate dismantling? And what secrets might the missing chambers hold? Ritual implements, inscriptions, or ceremonial objects that could illuminate the spiritual and political ambitions of the first true architect of monumental kingship? Fragments recovered from the site offer tantalizing clues. Limestone blocks, inscribed with hieroglyphs, hint at ceremonies of purification, offerings, and celestial observances. Reliefs depict priests, attendants, and the king himself, engaged in actions that seem both mundane and profoundly symbolic. Some images show Djoser seated before altars, others portray him participating in processions or ritual purification. Yet these scenes raise as many questions as they answer. Were they literal depictions of daily religious practice, or symbolic representations of divine order and kingship? Could certain images, motifs, or alignments encode knowledge now lost, intended only for those initiated in the sacred mysteries of the court? The architectural design of the lost temple suggests deliberate complexity. Archaeologists have uncovered traces of multiple enclosures, corridors, and chapels, some aligned precisely with celestial events, such as solstices or the rising of particular stars. This attention to orientation indicates that the temple was more than a static monument. It was an instrument of ritual, astronomy, and ideology. Was Djoser's temple an early attempt to merge architectural innovation with metaphysical symbolism, a space where stone, light, and shadow could enact sacred principles? And if so, what principles guided the design? And how did the spatial layout reinforce the king's authority, both earthly and divine? Historical texts provide fragments of insight but also introduce new mysteries. Djoser's reign is described as a period of consolidation, religious reform, and monumental ambition. Yet references to the temple are sparse and often indirect, preserved in later chronicles or inscriptions that post-date the original structures. Some scholars suggest that the temple may have served multiple functions: a site of royal worship, a center for the priesthood of Ra, and a locus for ceremonies reinforcing dynastic legitimacy. Could the loss of its complete structure have been deliberate, a reflection of changing religious priorities or political upheaval? Or is its disappearance simply a consequence of the passage of millennia, leaving us to reconstruct meaning from stone fragments and earthbound impressions? The ceremonial role of the temple remains particularly enigmatic. Djoser's funerary complex was not merely a tomb, it was a living stage for the enactment of sacred power. Courtyards may have hosted processions, Chapels may have housed divine statues, and corridors may have guided ritual movement according to cosmological principles. Yet without complete records, we can only speculate about the sensory experience of the temple. The sound of footsteps echoing against limestone walls, the flicker of torches in shadowed halls, the scent of incense rising to the heavens. Could the layout have been designed to amplify sound, light, or ritual focus in ways that reinforced the king's presence even in death? And if so, how much of this knowledge was intentionally encoded to be preserved only for the initiated? The fragments of inscriptions and reliefs that survive also pose deeper questions about symbolism and ideology. Certain motifs, the depiction of falcons, serpents, and celestial symbols, appear repeatedly, suggesting a visual language that conveyed authority, protection, and cosmic order. Some images depict Djoser subduing enemies or performing ritual acts that emphasize his role as intermediary between humans and gods. Yet other carvings, abstract or partially preserved, remain indecipherable, hinting at beliefs or practices that may have been deliberately obscured. Were these symbols meant to convey practical ritual knowledge, assert political dominance, or encode spiritual truths accessible only to the priesthood? The disappearance of much of the temple's structure also opens the door to speculation about hidden chambers, buried objects, or undiscovered elements of the complex. Could secret corridors have been designed to house sacred relics, ritual implements, or knowledge considered too potent for public view? Might there be inscriptions or artifacts beneath the sands that would clarify the religious and political functions of the complex, or even reveal unexpected aspects of Djoser's reign? The very incompleteness of the archaeological record invites inquiry, blending established history with the possibility of discovery. Even in fragments, the lost temple of Djoser conveys a profound sense of purpose. Every stone, every carving, every trace of a wall suggests deliberate intention: to honor the king, to engage the divine, and to communicate principles of order, continuity, and cosmic harmony. Yet it also reminds us of the ephemeral nature of human endeavor. Structures that once guided ritual and declared authority have been eroded, dismantled, or buried, leaving us with glimpses rather than full understanding. How much of Djoser's vision survives, and how much has been irretrievably lost? What insights about early monumental architecture, religious innovation, and the conception of kingship remain hidden beneath centuries of sand and human intervention? The lost temple, in its silence and absence, challenges modern observers to consider the relationship between presence and memory, between the physical remnants of history and the ideas they were meant to convey. It is a testament to the ambition of a ruler who dared to transform mortuary architecture, and to the ways in which religious and political power were intertwined in the earliest monumental projects of Egypt. Yet it is also a reminder that even monumental ambition cannot fully withstand the forces of time, and that mystery endures where the material record ends. In contemplating the lost temple of Pharaoh Djoser, we are invited to reflect on the fragility and endurance of human creations. Its stones whisper of ritual, authority, and innovation, while its vanished halls leave open questions about the early Third Dynasty, the role of sacred architecture, and the nature of kingship. Could undiscovered chambers or buried artifacts yet reveal new dimensions of Djoser's vision? And what might these discoveries tell us, not only about a long-dead pharaoh, but about the origins of monumental civilization itself? In the interplay between what remains and what is lost, the temple endures as a silent testament to human ingenuity, devotion, and the persistent allure of mystery. Beneath the shifting sands of Saqqara lies a world hidden from the sun, a subterranean labyrinth of colossal stone and shadow, the Serapeum. Long buried and largely forgotten, this underground necropolis is unlike any other in Egypt. not a royal tomb of pyramids and courtyards, but a subterranean sanctuary dedicated to the Apis bulls, sacred animals worshipped as living embodiments of divine power. To enter its dimly lit galleries, even today, is to step into a space designed to impress, to intimidate, and to inspire wonder, a deliberate intersection of nature, ritual, and monumental architecture that defies simple explanation. The Serapeum is a testament to ambition and devotion, carved directly into the limestone bedrock in a series of long, parallel galleries. Within each passage lie enormous stone sarcophagi, some weighing upwards of 70 tons, meticulously shaped from single blocks of granite or basalt. The scale alone inspires awe, yet it is the precision of their construction that deepens the mystery. How did ancient craftsmen manage to transport, carve, and position these immense stones without the aid of modern machinery? How were the tunnels and chambers excavated with such geometric accuracy, their walls straight, smooth, and seemingly designed to last for eternity? The necropolis was built over centuries, beginning in the New Kingdom and extending into the late period, yet the choice of Apis bulls as the focus of devotion raises profound questions. These animals were considered living gods, representatives of Ptah and later Osiris, and their deaths triggered elaborate burial rituals. Each bull received a sarcophagus, a ceremonial procession, and a funerary cult that mirrored royal practices in miniature. What was it about these sacred creatures that demanded such monumental effort? Was it solely religious, or did their cult reflect political or social power, a symbol of pharaonic legitimacy embedded in the life and death of these animals? Archaeological accounts suggest that each sarcophagus was custom-made, its dimensions precisely calculated for the individual bull it would contain. Some inscriptions on the lids record the name of the bull, the reigning pharaoh, and occasionally elaborate dedications. Yet not all sarcophagi are inscribed. Some are mysteriously blank, hinting at practices or beliefs that remain obscure. Were these omissions intentional, symbolic, or the result of incomplete historical records? And what might these blank stones tell us about hidden hierarchies within the cult, or secret aspects of the religious rituals performed within the Serapeum? The galleries themselves are enigmatic. Tunnels stretch hundreds of meters into the earth, flanked by massive stone blocks and chambers of varying dimensions. The sheer scale, combined with the subterranean environment, suggests an intentional desire to create a sacred, otherworldly space removed from the ordinary world above. Why choose the depths of the earth for these sacred burials? Was it an expression of the Apis bull's transition from mortal life to divine eternity, a symbolic journey into the underworld? And if so, what architectural or ritual principles guided the design of these vast, echoing corridors? Historical texts offer fragments of insight, but also deepen the mystery. Priests of the Apis cult maintained meticulous records of each bull, yet much of this documentation has been lost. Later travelers, such as Greek historians, recorded rumors of immense treasures and hidden knowledge within the Serapeum, though these accounts are difficult to verify. Were these simply exaggerations, or did they point to aspects of the site deliberately concealed from outsiders? Could there be chambers, inscriptions, or artifacts still buried beneath debris, awaiting discovery centuries later? Some sarcophagi appear to have been reused, or placed in positions that suggest ritual modification over time. The layering of burials, the shifting of stone coffers, and evidence of repair hint at a living tradition of use and adaptation, rather than a static, unchanging tomb. Could this indicate shifts in religious practice, political control, or the emergence of secret rites known only to the priesthood? And what might these patterns reveal about the relationship between mortuary architecture and sacred authority in ancient Egypt? The mysteries of the Serapeum extend beyond its physical structure. Certain inscriptions and reliefs hint at cosmological knowledge, possibly relating to the cycles of the sun, the Nile, or celestial phenomena, yet these interpretations remain speculative. Could the design of the galleries, their orientation, and the placement of the sarcophagi have encoded astronomical observations or ritual calendars? If so, what practical or spiritual purpose might this have served, and how much of this knowledge has been lost to time, leaving only tantalizing traces? Even the discovery of the site raises questions. When Auguste Mariette uncovered the Serapeum in the 19th century, he revealed vast chambers previously untouched for millennia. Yet much of the necropolis had already been looted in antiquity, with sarcophagi broken or removed, artifacts dispersed, and inscriptions defaced. How much of the original design and ritual content has been irretrievably lost? And what might remain concealed in unexplored corridors or beneath layers of collapsed rock, still whispering secrets from the age of pharaohs? The Serapeum also invites reflection on the interplay between mortality and divinity. The Apis bulls were mortal animals elevated to godhood, and their elaborate burials suggest a profound cultural investment in mediating between the earthly and divine realms. Did the scale and care of these burials reflect a genuine belief in the bull's divinity, or were they a tool of pharaonic propaganda, reinforcing the king's divine mandate through sacred association? How might this duality, the sacred and the political, inform our understanding of ancient Egyptian society, religion, and governance? Walking through the tunnels, imagining the shadows cast by flickering torches, one is struck by the tension between permanence and impermanence. The stones are monumental, carved to endure, yet the site has suffered from the ravages of time, theft, and erosion. What has survived is extraordinary, but what has vanished may have contained insights that could transform our understanding of Egyptian religion, architecture, and cosmology. Could there be hidden chambers still untouched, sarcophagi yet undiscovered, or inscriptions that illuminate beliefs lost to history? The Serapeum, in its silence and subterranean grandeur, embodies the mystery of ancient Egypt itself. It is a place of devotion, power, and meticulous design, yet it is also a reminder that history is incomplete. The scale, precision, and symbolism of the necropolis invite endless questions, and the absence of full documentation ensures that speculation remains a vital part of interpretation. Could future excavation, analysis, or technology reveal secrets hidden for thousands of years? And if so, how might these discoveries reshape our understanding of the relationship between humans, animals, and the divine in early Egyptian civilization? In the end, the Serapeum is not only a burial site, but a meditation on the extraordinary ambition of ancient Egyptian culture. Its tunnels, sarcophagi, and inscriptions speak of devotion, ritual, and reverence, yet their full meaning remains just out of reach, echoing the tension between what is known and what is unknowable. As we descend into the shadows of the galleries, we are reminded that the history of Egypt is not only written in stone, it is whispered in the spaces left unexplored, in the mysteries preserved beneath layers of rock and sand, inviting generations to ponder, investigate, and wonder. Along the fertile banks of the Nile, in Upper Egypt, stands one of the oldest and most enigmatic centers of worship, the Temple of Abydos. At first glance, it appears as many ancient Egyptian temples do, a rectangular complex of limestone walls, sanctuaries, and ceremonial halls. But for those who linger, Abydos reveals itself as a labyrinth of mysteries, a place where history, ritual, and legend converge in ways that defy simple explanation. Every column, every carving, every shadowed corridor hints at stories both revealed and concealed, suggesting that the temple was more than a site of worship. It was a repository of memory, authority, and perhaps hidden knowledge. Abydos has long been associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and the temple's sanctuaries reflect the centrality of death, resurrection, and cosmic order in Egyptian thought. Pilgrims from across the Nile Valley came to this sacred city to pay homage to the god, leaving inscriptions, votive offerings, and traces of ritual activity. Yet Abydos is unlike many other temples in its complexity and ambiguity. Layers of construction, from the early dynasties to the New Kingdom, overlap and intersect, leaving archaeologists with tantalizing fragments and confounding gaps. Was this layering accidental, the result of centuries of renovation and rebuilding, or deliberate, designed to encode historical, religious, or cosmic knowledge for the initiated? One of the temple's most intriguing features is the series of hieroglyphic inscriptions known as the Abydos King List. Carved along a corridor of the temple, this chronicle names 76 rulers of Egypt, yet curiously omits several kings who we know ruled during the same period. Why would certain dynasties or rulers be erased from memory, while others were immortalized in stone? Was it political expediency, a reflection of religious favor, or a ritualistic curation of memory meant to highlight specific lines of succession? And what might these selective omissions reveal about the intersection of power, memory, and divine authority in ancient Egypt? The temple itself is a masterwork of ritual architecture. Its layout follows precise alignments, with sanctuaries, chapels, and corridors arranged along axes that echo celestial patterns and natural features of the surrounding landscape. The innermost sanctuary, dedicated to Osiris, is deliberately austere, yet commanding. Scholars have speculated that the spatial design of Abydos may have functioned as more than symbolic. It could have guided ritual movement, illuminated sacred objects at specific times of the year, or even acted as a device for observing celestial phenomena. Could the architects have intended the temple to operate as a cosmic instrument, translating divine order into stone, shadow, and light? And if so, what knowledge or power did these alignments convey to priests and pilgrims alike? Burials and relics further deepen the temple's mysteries. While Abydos is primarily a cult center rather than a necropolis, archaeological excavations have revealed caches of votive figurines, miniature boats, and ceremonial implements, often deposited in hidden chambers or along obscure passageways. Some of these items are inscribed with prayers and symbols whose meaning remains partially undeciphered. Were they intended for personal devotion, political display, or secret ritual purposes? And might the temple itself have concealed spaces yet to be discovered? Chambers deliberately hidden to preserve sacred knowledge or ritual artifacts from prying eyes? One of the most perplexing enigmas of Abydos lies in its association with both the living and the dead. Pharaohs and priests alike performed rituals here to honor Osiris, yet the temple also became a site of mythic narrative. Certain reliefs depict the god's resurrection and triumph over death with a level of detail and symbolism that has puzzled Egyptologists. The imagery is vivid, intricate, and often cryptic, blending naturalistic representation with abstract symbolism. Could these depictions encode a lost understanding of the afterlife, esoteric rituals, or cosmological principles that were meant only for the initiated? Or were they primarily narrative devices, reinforcing the theological authority of Osiris as the ultimate arbiter of life and death? Abydos is also entwined with tales that border on the unexplained. Legends suggest that the temple marks sites of earlier, even pre-dynastic shrines, long since vanished beneath layers of sand and construction. Some scholars have noted unusual stones and carvings, whose shapes and symbols do not appear in other contemporary complexes. Were these remnants of earlier cult practices, echoes of forgotten dynasties, or deliberate insertions to link historical memory with divine myth? Could they be evidence of a tradition older and more complex than the surviving texts suggest, preserved in stone even when the knowledge itself was lost? The construction methods of Abydos add another layer of intrigue. Massive limestone blocks, precisely cut and fitted, form walls, pillars, and obelisks. Yet the techniques used to achieve such accuracy remain partially unknown. Some walls exhibit subtle shifts in alignment, possibly to accommodate ritual pathways or astronomical observations. Others display architectural ingenuity, such as hidden chambers, niches, and stairways, whose purpose remains speculative. Were these structural choices purely functional, or did they also carry symbolic significance, encoding ideas about divine order, kingship, or the cycles of life and death? Even modern investigations raise more questions than answers. Remote sensing, ground-penetrating radar, and careful excavation have revealed anomalies beneath the temple floors, potential voids, and unexplored corridors. Are these remnants of older structures, caches of ritual objects, or chambers deliberately sealed for ceremonial purposes? Could future exploration reveal texts, artifacts, or architectural features that fundamentally change our understanding of Abydos and its role in Egyptian religious life? And if so, what might these discoveries tell us about the sophistication, ambition, and spiritual insight of the people who built and maintained this extraordinary complex? The temple's ongoing mystery is not confined to its architecture or inscriptions. Abydos exists as a nexus of time, memory, and belief, where human intention meets the inexorable forces of nature. Wind, water, and sand have erased much, leaving only fragments of what was once a vibrant center of worship. Yet in its surviving corridors, carvings, and hidden chambers, the temple speaks of devotion, power, and the enduring human desire to connect with the divine. How much of the temple's meaning was ever accessible to ordinary worshippers, and how much was reserved for the eyes and ears of priests and pharaohs alone? The unsolved riddles of Abydos compel reflection on the nature of history itself. What does it mean when a place can be both fully present and elusive, both tangible and enigmatic? The temple embodies the tension between what survives and what is lost, between the rituals we can reconstruct and those forever hidden in shadows or buried beneath millennia of earth. Could there be inscriptions that clarify the missing dynasties, hidden symbols that illuminate unknown ceremonies, or architectural secrets that redefine our understanding of Egyptian cosmology? And if these secrets remain undiscovered, what does that imply about the limits of human knowledge, even in a civilization as meticulously recorded as ancient Egypt? To walk through Abydos is to enter a dialogue with time. Every pillar, every hieroglyph, every scarred wall speaks both of achievement and absence, of devotion and mystery. The temple remains incomplete in our understanding, a space that challenges us to reconcile fragments with imagination, fact with speculation, and history with enduring enigma. Its riddles are not merely archaeological curiosities. They are invitations to ponder the intersection of mortality, divinity, and memory in the world's most sophisticated early civilization. The Temple of Abydos, in its enduring presence and tantalizing gaps, reminds us that history is often a dialogue between the known and the unknown. Its corridors, reliefs, and hidden chambers speak of kings, priests, and devotees long gone, yet continue to invite modern observers to ask the questions that remain unanswered. What lies beneath the temple floors? What knowledge has been lost? And what might future discovery reveal about the origins of Egyptian religion, kingship, and belief? The answers, if they exist, remain shrouded in sand, stone, and shadow, waiting for those willing to look closely, think deeply, and wonder without end. In the quiet corridors of an ancient tomb, tucked within the sands of Middle Egypt, lies a coffin whose inscriptions have perplexed scholars for over a century. This is the coffin of Pharaoh Amenemhat, a ruler of the 12th dynasty, whose reign was marked by consolidation, monumental construction, and the subtle yet pervasive assertion of divine authority. Unlike the grandeur of pyramids and temples, the coffin is an intimate artifact, a vessel designed to house the mortal remains of a king while ensuring his passage into eternity. Yet, it is the text upon its surfaces, the cryptic hieroglyphs, unusual phrasing, and enigmatic sequences, that transforms this object from mere mortuary art into a riddle suspended in time. The coffin itself is modest in scale compared to the monumental tombs of later dynasties, yet its craftsmanship is exquisite. Polished wood, carefully joined and coated with pigments now muted by centuries, forms a container that was meant to endure, both physically and spiritually. The inscriptions, painted in vivid lines of black, red, and blue, run along the lid and interior walls, weaving together prayers, magical formulas, and symbolic motifs. At first glance, they appear consistent with the mortuary texts common in the Middle Kingdom: guides for the king's journey through the afterlife, protective invocations, and invocations of Osirian resurrection. But closer examination reveals anomalies that raise profound questions. Why do certain passages deviate from the established coffin texts of the period? Why do some sequences repeat in patterns that seem deliberate yet defy conventional interpretation? And what might these deviations indicate about Amenemhat's personal beliefs, political messaging, or esoteric knowledge preserved only for the initiated? The content of the texts suggests an intricate relationship between death, kingship, and divine order. Many inscriptions detail the journey of the soul through the Duat, the realm of the dead, describing encounters with deities, obstacles, and magical forces. Others provide instructions for protective rituals intended to guard the king against malevolent spirits and ensure his successful resurrection. Yet certain symbols and sequences appear unique, unrecorded in other contemporary coffins or funerary texts. Could these be personal modifications by the scribes, reflecting Amenemhat's specific theological interpretations? Or were they part of a deliberate attempt to encode knowledge meant only for those who understood the inner workings of the royal cult? The arrangement of the inscriptions themselves adds another layer of intrigue. Some scholars have noted that the sequence of hieroglyphs is not strictly linear. Certain passages appear mirrored, reversed, or interspersed with gaps, creating patterns that challenge straightforward translation. Was this a sophisticated method of encoding sacred knowledge, a visual representation of cosmic principles, or simply an artistic choice meant to align with ritual conventions? The very act of arranging the text in such a nonlinear fashion raises questions about the interplay between written language, symbolic meaning, and magical efficacy in ancient Egyptian ritual practice. Beyond textual anomalies, the coffin's iconography deepens the enigma. Depictions of deities, animals, and celestial symbols accompany the inscriptions, but their arrangement and proportions differ from standard coffin text conventions. Some images appear unusually stylized or abstract, while others are positioned in unexpected locations, suggesting deliberate intent. Could these visual deviations correspond to secret meanings, astral alignments, or metaphysical principles that guided Amenemhat's journey into the afterlife? Might they reflect regional traditions, esoteric priestly knowledge, or a fusion of multiple cultural influences within the court at the time? The interplay between image and text transforms the coffin into more than a burial container. It becomes a narrative, a ritual instrument, and possibly a coded map of cosmic order. The historical context of Amenemhat's reign provides additional clues and further questions. The 12th dynasty was a period of relative stability, yet Amenemhat's accession and consolidation of power may have required the projection of religious authority alongside political strength. Could the unusual inscriptions on his coffin have been part of this projection, designed to emphasize his alignment with divine forces and legitimize his rule beyond the visible monuments? And if so, how might these inscriptions reflect a deliberate strategy to merge personal theology, statecraft, and ritual practice in ways that were meant to be preserved in the coffin's very form? Some researchers have speculated that the texts may encode knowledge beyond the practical rituals of mortuary practice. Recurrent sequences and mirrored passages have led to theories that the inscriptions contain calendrical, astronomical, or even symbolic numerological references, though these remain speculative. Could the coffin itself have functioned as a kind of sacred tool, bridging earthly authority and celestial order? And if so, what knowledge, ritual, mathematical, or metaphysical, was Amenemhat believed to possess, and how was it intended to endure beyond death? The discovery and study of Amenemhat's coffin have also raised questions about preservation, loss, and historical reconstruction. Many of the inscriptions are partially damaged, faded, or obscured by centuries of burial, leaving gaps in interpretation. Some passages, once clear, are now indecipherable, tantalizing researchers with fragments that hint at more complete rituals, prayers, or cosmological insights. Could the missing or damaged sections conceal revelations about religious innovation, political legitimacy, or even unrecorded aspects of the 12th dynasty's relationship to older dynastic traditions? And how much of the ritual and symbolic knowledge encoded in the coffin remains hidden, lost to the vagaries of time, decay, and human intervention? Even the methods by which the texts were inscribed raise questions. The precision of the hieroglyphs, the consistency of pigment application, and the careful spacing suggest highly skilled scribes intimately familiar with ritual and cosmology. Yet the anomalies in the text imply a creative or adaptive element, possibly reflecting local traditions, esoteric knowledge, or individual interpretation. Were these deviations sanctioned by the king himself, or the product of scribal discretion? And what might they reveal about the transmission of sacred knowledge, the role of literacy, and the relationship between priesthood and royalty in the Middle Kingdom? Beyond the inscriptions, the coffin's existence invites reflection on the human desire to preserve identity, authority, and belief across time. Amenemhat's texts are simultaneously practical, symbolic, and enigmatic, designed to ensure resurrection, encode sacred principles, and communicate status across centuries. Yet they are also a reminder of what remains unknowable, the thoughts, intentions, and subtle meanings embedded in the texts, which may have been understood only by those present at the time of burial. What nuances of ritual, theology, or personal philosophy are forever inaccessible to modern interpretation? As we examine Amenemhat's coffin today, in museums or archaeological reports, it stands as both artifact and enigma. Its texts are a bridge to a past civilization, offering glimpses of religious practice, royal ideology, and ritual complexity. Yet the anomalies, the gaps, and the unexplained sequences remind us that history is never fully transparent. Could there be hidden codes, lost prayers, or esoteric knowledge encoded in ways that resist translation? Might future technological advances or discoveries of complementary artifacts reveal meanings that have eluded centuries of scholarship? The coffin, in its stillness and silence, embodies the tension between presence and absence, between knowledge and mystery. Its inscriptions invite careful study, interpretation, and imagination, while simultaneously asserting that some aspects of Amenemhat's reign and of his conception of life, death, and the divine may never be fully understood. In contemplating its texts, we are drawn into the enduring human fascination with mortality, memory, and the quest to preserve meaning across time. The coffin's puzzles are not merely historical curiosities, they are challenges to perception, interpretation, and the very limits of our understanding. The puzzling texts of Amenemhat's coffin remind us that the past is never fully revealed. They speak of devotion, authority, and ritual mastery, yet remain tantalizingly incomplete, preserving questions for generations to explore. What secrets lie hidden within the surviving inscriptions? How much of Amenemhat's vision of kingship and divinity remains encoded in patterns we have yet to decipher? And, most provocatively, what might future discoveries reveal about the intricate interplay of power, belief, and knowledge in ancient Egypt? Insights that the sands of time have kept silent until now? Deep within the heart of the Theban necropolis, carved into the arid cliffs of the Valley of the Kings, lies a tomb that has confounded archaeologists, historians, and Egyptologists for over a century, tomb K555. Its unassuming entrance belies the extraordinary controversies and enigmas contained within. Unlike the grand, carefully organized tombs of pharaohs such as Tutankhamun, K555 is narrow, almost claustrophobic, with a sense of abruptness and imperfection that suggests it may have been repurposed or hastily adapted. Yet despite, or perhaps because of, its apparent irregularities, the tomb has become one of the most compelling and mysterious sites in Egyptian archaeology, linked intimately to the tumultuous Amarna period and the controversial royal family that ruled during it. The tomb was discovered in 1907 by the archaeologist Edward Ayrton under the supervision of Theodore Davis, and its contents immediately raised more questions than answers. Inside lay a single burial, a solitary sarcophagus containing a skeletal figure, accompanied by an assortment of funerary objects, some bearing inscriptions, others deliberately or accidentally stripped of identifying marks. Initially, the remains were thought to belong to Akhenaten, the pharaoh who radically transformed Egyptian religion by promoting the worship of Aten, the sun disk. Yet over time, questions arose about the identity of the occupant. Could it have been Akhenaten himself? Or might the tomb hold the remains of another member of his controversial lineage? Smenkhkare, perhaps. Or even a previously unknown figure of the Amarna dynasty. The architecture of K555 adds to its mystery. The tomb is modest, almost unfinished, with a single corridor leading to a small chamber. Its walls are bare, lacking the elaborate decoration that characterizes royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Was this simplicity a reflection of hurried construction, a deliberate attempt to obscure the identity of the occupant, or the result of political upheaval that followed Akhenaten's controversial religious reforms? The tomb's very structure seems to whisper of uncertainty, as if the chaos of the Amarna period, its religious revolutions, dynastic disputes, and swift reversals of policy, left even the resting places of its royals unsettled. The sarcophagus itself offers a mixture of clarity and enigma. The figure within was adorned with a gilded mask, a symbol of kingship and divine protection, yet it bore features atypical of other royal burials. The accompanying funerary objects present further puzzles, a mix of old and new artistic styles, inscriptions with partial erasures, and items that appear deliberately repurposed from other tombs. Could these anomalies reflect an attempt to reconcile conflicting traditions, Aten worship and the older cult of Amun, or were they the results of hasty burial and political uncertainty following Akhenaten's death? And if the tomb was intended for someone other than Akhenaten, why were elements of royal iconography preserved, while others were conspicuously altered or removed? The skeletal remains themselves have been at the center of debate for decades. Initial examinations suggested the occupant was a young male, roughly in his 20s or early 30s, though measurements of skull shape and bone structure have led to varying interpretations. Some researchers argue the bones indicate Akhenaten, based on comparative analysis with known royal lineages. Others suggest Smenkhkare, a little-known co-regent or successor. DNA analysis, conducted more recently, has shed partial light on familial relationships, yet it has raised as many questions as it answers. The occupant appears closely related to Tutankhamun, yet the precise familial connections remain debated. Could the mysteries of Cave 55 reveal not only the identity of the Amarna royals, but also the hidden dynamics of a court marked by intrigue, rivalry, and theological upheaval? Adding to the intrigue are the artifacts found within the tomb. Jewelry, canopic jars, fragments of furniture, and ceremonial objects bear the names of Akhenaten, Queen Tiye, and other members of the royal family, yet many are damaged or deliberately altered. The coexistence of older, traditional motifs alongside radical Amarna-style artistry suggests a period of transition, cultural negotiation, and perhaps even tension. Why were some items defaced or erased? Was this part of a posthumous attempt to condemn the memory of Akhenaten, the so-called heretic king, or merely a practical recycling of valuable materials? Could the inconsistencies in style and inscription indicate that KV 55 functioned as a burial site of necessity rather than of honor? A temporary resting place that became permanent due to historical circumstance? The historical context of the tomb deepens the mystery. The Amarna period was defined by sweeping religious reform, unprecedented in Egyptian history, yet it was followed by rapid restoration of traditional practices after Akhenaten's death. KV 55 occupies a liminal space in this turbulent era. Its obscured architecture, eclectic funerary objects, and uncertain occupant suggest a narrative of upheaval where religion, politics, and royal succession intersected in unpredictable ways. Could the tomb itself be a physical manifestation of the uncertainties and contested authority of this period, a reflection of both reverence and erasure? Scholars have also speculated about hidden chambers or unexplored recesses within KV 55. Though the tomb has been extensively studied, its irregular design leaves open the possibility that additional artifacts or inscriptions remain undiscovered, sealed behind rubble or concealed by centuries of sediment. Could there be letters, ritual objects, or symbolic markers that would clarify the identity of the occupant or the circumstances of burial? And if so, how might they reshape our understanding of one of the most enigmatic chapters in Egyptian history? The Amarna royals themselves remain figures of fascination. Akhenaten's religious revolution, the brief and obscure rule of Smenkhkare, and the tragic youth of Tutankhamun all converge within KV 55, creating a nexus of history, mystery, and speculation. The tomb is more than a burial site. It is a tangible reminder of the fragility of memory, the consequences of political and religious upheaval, and the ways in which history can be simultaneously preserved and obscured by stone, sand, and human intent. Could KV 55, in its modest chambers and enigmatic artifacts, hold secrets about the daily lives, beliefs, and power struggles of the Amarna family that have yet to be deciphered? Even after more than a century of study, KV 55 challenges our assumptions about what can be known. It reminds us that artifacts are not merely objects of aesthetic or historical interest. They are vessels of human intention, cultural negotiation, and ritual significance. The tomb, its coffin, and its contents are incomplete narratives, offering glimpses of a complex world that modern scholars can reconstruct only partially. The inconsistencies, anomalies, and unanswered questions invite ongoing reflection, encouraging us to consider how memory, authority, and devotion were negotiated in one of Egypt's most transformative and controversial eras. Standing at the threshold of KV 55, imagining the dim light flickering across its stone walls and the weight of centuries pressing from above, one is struck by the tension between presence and absence. The tomb is simultaneously revealing and withholding, offering concrete evidence of the Amarna royals' existence while preserving secrets that resist closure. What truths lie concealed in the damaged inscriptions, the unusual artifacts, or the skeletal remains themselves? Could future discoveries, technological analysis, excavation, or serendipitous finds unveil answers, or will the tomb continue to guard its mysteries as faithfully as it has for millennia? The enigma of Kekev 55 is not merely an archaeological puzzle. It is a meditation on the fragility of memory, the impermanence of power, and the enduring allure of the unknown. It challenges historians and Egyptologists to question what can be known, what must be inferred, and what may forever remain beyond comprehension. In its quiet chambers and shattered sarcophagus, the tomb embodies the intersecting forces of history, religion, and human ambition, offering a compelling reminder that some mysteries endure not despite investigation, but because of it. As the Valley of the Kings stretches silently into the horizon, K555 stands as a threshold between certainty and speculation, between the tangible and the enigmatic. The puzzling texts of Amenemhat's coffin may have prepared us for the intricate symbolism of royal mortuary practices, but KV55 confronts us with the human and historical complexity that lies behind the stone, the ambitions, beliefs, and fraught decisions of the Amarna rulers, preserved in their final resting place, yet still leaving questions unanswered. And so, as we contemplate the tomb's shadows, its scattered artifacts, and the contested identity of its occupant, we are invited to wonder how much of history is determined by what survives, and how much remains hidden, waiting patiently to be discovered, interpreted, and understood. As the Nile winds gently past the town of Dendera, its waters reflecting the muted glow of the desert sun, one of Egypt's most visually striking and intellectually perplexing monuments rises from the sands, the Temple of Hathor. Its colonnaded halls, elaborately decorated ceilings, and soaring stone walls have long drawn pilgrims, archaeologists, and travelers alike. Yet hidden within its sacred chambers are carvings that have ignited debates, speculation, and fascination for generations, the so-called Dendera light reliefs. These images, etched into stone with meticulous care, depict objects and figures that appear simultaneously familiar and inexplicable, inviting questions that have yet to find satisfying answers. The reliefs are located primarily in the crypts beneath the temple's roof, a dimly lit labyrinth of stone chambers intended for ritual and storage. Here, the walls are adorned with symbolic carvings, depictions of deities, priests, and ceremonial scenes. But among these traditional motifs lie elongated objects, sometimes described as bulb-like, connected by tubes to figures performing ritual acts. Some interpretations suggest that these images portray lamps or electrical devices, leading to speculation that the ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge of technology long before historians believed it possible. Yet mainstream Egyptology offers a more grounded explanation, that the reliefs depict symbolic representations of creation, fertility, and the divine transmission of power. Even so, the unusual shapes, the repetitive precision, and the apparent function of the objects invite closer scrutiny. Historically, the Temple of Hathor at Dendera was completed during the Ptolemaic period, around 100 BCE, though its foundations and earlier sanctuaries date back centuries before. The craftsmanship of the reliefs is exceptional, with lines and proportions carved to exacting standards, suggesting that they were intended to convey meaning carefully and deliberately. Scholars note that the elongated bulbs often emerge from lotus flowers, a recurring symbol of rebirth and cosmic creation, and are linked by a serpent or cord to a deity, most commonly Harsamtus, a manifestation of Horus. In this context, the reliefs may represent the life-giving power of divine energy, a mystical conduit connecting heaven and earth. Yet the combination of elongated shapes, connecting tubes, and sparks-like elements has led some observers to imagine more literal technological possibilities, Could these images encode lost knowledge of energy, light, or mechanical invention? The very placement of the reliefs within the temple adds to the mystery. Buried in a series of crypts, far from the public eye and ritual space of the main halls, they are not immediately visible to pilgrims or casual visitors. Was this deliberate? Were the carvings intended for a select group of priests who understood their symbolic or perhaps practical meanings? The inaccessibility of these chambers suggests secrecy, or at least specialized knowledge. Could the reliefs have functioned as a visual mnemonic, a teaching tool for initiates, or a codified representation of esoteric knowledge meant to be preserved, but not widely interpreted? The reliefs themselves are astonishing in their intricacy. In some panels, the elongated objects are depicted with coiled serpents within, extending into the bulb and connecting to the deity above. Light, energy, or divine power is suggested by subtle rays or lines, yet the exact meaning remains ambiguous. Egyptologists often emphasize symbolic interpretation, noting that serpents are a recurring motif of protection, regeneration, and cosmic power, and that the bulbs could symbolize the lotus flower's seed pod, a metaphor for creation. But the precision of the depiction and the apparent function implied by connecting chords continues to fuel debate. Were these images purely symbolic, or did they encode knowledge that is now lost to us? Some alternative theories propose even more intriguing possibilities. Certain researchers and fringe theorists argue that the reliefs hint at ancient Egyptian understanding of electricity, batteries, or some form of mechanical illumination. They point to the resemblance of the bulbs to modern light sources, the tubes as conduits for energy, and the serpent as a symbolic conductor. While mainstream scholarship has largely dismissed these interpretations as anachronistic, the detail, placement, and unusual nature of the carvings ensure that the speculation persists. Could the reliefs be an allegory of unseen forces, captured in stone as both art and instruction, or might they preserve observations of natural phenomena that were misinterpreted over millennia? The broader context of the temple reinforces the sense of layered meaning. Hathor, the goddess to whom the temple is dedicated, is associated with music, fertility, motherhood, and cosmic harmony. The temple itself is an architectural marvel, with precise alignments, astronomical references, and a symbolic floor plan echoing the principles of divine order. In this light, the Dendera reliefs may reflect a sophisticated understanding of cosmology and ritual symbolism, encoding relationships between deities, celestial bodies, and human experience. Yet the enigmatic shapes, repetitive patterns, and precise linear forms still leave the mind asking, is there more here than we can perceive? Did the ancient Egyptians intend a level of meaning that eludes modern translation? Another aspect of the mystery lies in the ongoing preservation and interpretation of the reliefs. Over the centuries, the crypts have been looted, walls have weathered, and pigment has faded, leaving gaps in the narrative. Some panels are partially obscured or damaged, which makes reconstructing their intended meaning a matter of careful extrapolation. Could these missing sections have clarified the function of the bulbs, the symbolism of the serpents, or the significance of the connecting chords? And how much might be irretrievably lost, hidden beneath centuries of neglect or natural decay? Interestingly, comparisons with other Egyptian temples reveal both similarities and anomalies. While many temples depict divine energy, celestial power, and ritual implements, the Dendera reliefs are unusually concrete in their depiction of tubular forms and bulb-like shapes. Could this specificity reflect a local tradition, a Ptolemaic innovation, or the influence of cross-cultural knowledge circulating in Egypt during this late period? Alternatively, might the reliefs encode metaphorical or spiritual principles unique to Dendera, understood by priests in a ritual context that modern interpreters cannot fully grasp. The Dendera light reliefs thus sit at the intersection of observation, symbolism, and speculation. They remind us that Egyptian art was never merely decorative. It was a language, a vehicle for transmitting complex religious, social, and cosmological ideas across generations. Yet the ambiguity of these particular carvings ensures that they remain open to interpretation, a tantalizing enigma in a civilization renowned for its precision, ritual sophistication, and symbolic depth. Are we looking at an allegorical representation of divine energy, a lost technological understanding, or a combination of both? The reliefs do not answer. They provoke. As modern scholars, researchers, and curious observers study these carvings, the Dendera reliefs invite reflection on the nature of knowledge itself. How much of what the ancient Egyptians knew about light, energy, and divine power was encoded symbolically rather than literally? What rituals, teachings, or observations have been lost in translation, leaving behind only images that continue to puzzle us? And perhaps most intriguingly, what other secrets lie buried within the temple's crypts, waiting silently for centuries before revealing themselves to those willing to look, interpret, and wonder? The mystery of the Dendera light reliefs is not confined to their images alone. It extends to the minds and intentions of the people who created them. Priests, artisans, and royal patrons collaborated in crafting these carvings, embedding layers of meaning that may never be fully recovered. They remind us that history is not simply a record of events, but a dialogue between the seen and the unseen, the known and the ineffable. In this sense, the reliefs are more than art. They are a bridge across time, inviting us to contemplate what it meant to witness and encode the forces of the world in a civilization that valued both the tangible and the mystical. Standing in the crypts of Dendera today, in the quiet shadow of Hathor's temple, the reliefs continue to provoke wonder. The elongated bulbs, the coiled serpents, and the connecting cords remain both familiar and strange, inviting interpretations grounded in ritual, cosmology, and human ingenuity. Yet the unanswered questions linger. Were these depictions purely symbolic, or do they hint at knowledge now lost to us? Did the artists intend for future generations to decipher hidden truths, or were the carvings meant solely for the initiated eyes of Ptolemaic priests? And, ultimately, what might further study, excavation, or insight reveal about the intersection of art, science, and spirituality in one of Egypt's most enduring temples? The Dendera reliefs remind us that even in a civilization as meticulously documented as ancient Egypt, mysteries persist. They invite contemplation, curiosity, and reverence for a people who sought to capture the unseen forces of the world in stone. And as we gaze upon them, centuries removed, we are compelled to ask not only what they meant, but also what remains hidden, waiting patiently in the shadows of sacred spaces, for the eyes and minds attuned to wonder.